Chapter 1561. The combination of humans and demons was something that had never been seen before. On one hand, it was already very rare for a race to have 6 people participate in the death match. Not to mention, there was a 5th phase Dominator kid among the 6. In the death match between new demigods, what could a 5th phase Dominator kid do? No one knew. But on the human and demon side, consort, you had to ensure Long Yu's safety, no matter what. Frost and Imperial Wind did the same. Although Frost and Imperial Wind belonged to different factions, at this time, the two of them were both representatives of the Demigod Academy. They were both at the peak of the human race and the demon race. Towards Long Yu, this rising star, they were both very optimistic. As for Long Zai-Tian, he wasn't talking to Long Yu at all. He wasn't even looking at him. However, if Long Yu were to encounter any danger, it would be very difficult for him to not save him. So Long Yu's safety could be guaranteed. As long as the others didn't all die, Long Yu would be able to survive. Even if Long Yu wasn't satisfied with hiding behind others, under the current circumstances, this was the only path he could take. Otherwise, if he fought against the other demigods of the other races, he would definitely die. The 6 of them made their preparations. Only the new demigod Yao cultivator, Lang Qing Shuang, wasn't very familiar with Long Yu. Moreover, this guy always maintained a cold expression, as if he didn't want anyone to get close to him. Unless someone called out to him, he wouldn't say a single word. As time continued to pass, the 6 of them made their preparations. From the direction of the Eclipse Moon ancient region, a golden whirlpool of energy finally appeared. That was the legendary Death Match Whirlpool. After the Deathmatch Vortex was opened, all the living beings near the eroding Moon ancient domain would be sucked into the vortex. The power of the vortex was very strong. For the new demigods in the eroding Moon ancient domain, it could protect them and send them safely to the place where the deathmatch would take place. For the others, this death match whirlpool was undoubtedly a standard whirlpool of death. Even a demigod would not be able to survive after being sucked in. Because of this, apart from Long Yu's group of 6, the rest of the humans and demons had all left. At this moment, many people were probably waiting for the news of Long Yu and the rest of them in the Demigod College. When the deathmatch whirlpool appeared, Long Yu noticed that Long Zai-Tian's gaze flickered with a trace of killing intent. Moreover, this killing intent seemed to have come because of someone's death. Is that Qi Beifei? Long Yu thought. Long Zai-Tian was very concerned about Qi Beifei's death. Although he didn't say anything on the surface, it could be seen that Long Zai-Tian had been suppressing his emotions these past few days. Only now, with his killing intent bursting forth, did he look much more spirited. It seemed that Long Zai-Tian blamed Qi Beifei's death on the new demigods of other alien species and intended to eliminate as many new demigods of alien species as possible in the battle. Regarding this, Long Yu could only apologize in his heart. He couldn't tell the other party the truth, but under the circumstances at that time, he had to kill Qi Beifei. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain to the Heaven Fire Elder when he returned. Since he had promised the Heaven Fire Elder, he had to do it. Moreover, Qi Beifei was indeed not a good person. In any case, the deathmatch round was finally about to officially begin. The 6 people from the alliance of the humans and demons were all sucked in by the golden power of the deathmatch whirlpool. One by one, they were pulled into it, ready to be sent to the place where the deathmatch round would begin. For some reason, Long Yu was placed last. Perhaps it was intentional by the Eclipse Moon ancient region. However, even if he was placed last, it didn't matter. Anyway, when the time came, the 6 of them would appear together in the deathmatch round. Seeing the others being sucked into the golden whirlpool one by one and disappearing in front of him, Long Yu suddenly felt that something was wrong. The closer he got to the golden whirlpool, the more he felt that there seemed to be something on his forehead that was about to break through the air and shine with the golden whirlpool. This situation made his heart skip a beat. Could it be the flame deity position mark? Just as Long Yu was thinking about this, he subconsciously tried to summon the flame deity position mark. Then, he felt that the flame deity position mark had indeed appeared on his forehead. Then, with a flash of golden light, it actually connected with the golden whirlpool. This situation made Long Yu's heart skip a beat. He didn't know what was happening. He only felt that after the flame deity position mark appeared, his entire body seemed to be bathed in bursts of golden flames. All the power in his body was being illuminated by the golden flames, and it was rapidly transforming. 1 time, 2 times. It continued until it was 10 times, 20 times, and even 100 times, but the transformation process was still not over. At this time, Long Yu had completely fainted and was swept into the center of the golden whirlpool. He was the last to be pulled into the golden whirlpool released by the eclipse moon ancient region. Apart from him, no one else had seen such a phenomenon. Not only did the other 5 people from the human race and demon race not see it, but the other newly advanced demigods of the foreign races who were swept into the golden whirlpool also didn't see such a scene. Long Yu passed out. The 5 newly advanced demigods of the human race and demon race, who were the first to be swept into the golden whirlpool, were the first to wake up. When they woke up, they immediately observed their surroundings and found that they were in a silent, pitch-black void. In this void, in the distance, the light of some stars was constantly flashing. There were a total of 100 of these stars. Obviously, they were the rewards for the 100 rounds of the death mat. These 100 stars were all in one direction of the 5 people. They seemed to have arrived at the edge of a spherical void, and the rewards were all in the center of the spherical void. The closest star to the 5 people was about 10,000 feet away. As for the most precious treasure in the center of the entire spherical void, it was 100,000 feet away. According to the rules of the eclipse moon ancient region, any existence in the spherical void could only teleport a distance of 100 feet at most. Therefore, the distance of 100,000 feet would require them to teleport at least 100 times. As for the precious treasure in the center that was 100,000 feet away, they would need to teleport 1,000 times to reach it. As for flying forward, it was impossible to do so without using spatial teleportation. If it was in the outside world, any demigod could casually fly hundreds of thousands of feet in a single breath. But in the eclipse moon ancient region, their maximum speed was limited. Even the fastest they could go was 100 feet in a single breath. According to the density of this spherical void, every 10,000 to 20,000 feet, we will encounter a team of demigods of the foreign races. We must be careful. Consort Yu said solemnly. Yes. Frost and Imperial Wind both nodded. Although they didn't like each other, they could only take a cooperative attitude at this time. Long Zai Tian suddenly said in a low voice, "That kid didn't come in." That kid? When the other 4 heard this, they were immediately shocked. They all turned around to look, and sure enough, there were only 5 of them gathered together. Where was Long Yu's figure? Where is he? Imperial Wind frowned. I don't know. He was clearly behind us and was sucked in. Frost's expression was serious. Before she was sucked in, she had turned around to look. She had clearly seen Long Yu and the others being sucked into the golden vortex. How could Long Yu have disappeared? There shouldn't be any accidents. Let's wait a bit. If he doesn't appear, then the 5 of us can only move forward. Consort Yu shook her head and said worriedly. Out of the 5 of them, without a doubt, Consort Yu was the most concerned about Long Yu. But at this moment, it was Consort Yu who first said that she wanted to abandon Long Yu and move forward. This wasn't because Consort Yu wanted to abandon Long Yu. It was because she was very clear that Long Yu was different from the 5 of them. It was very possible that the entire Eclipse Moon ancient region had other arrangements for Long Yu. After all, according to their previous speculations, letting Long Yu directly participate in the death match and fight against the new demigods of the other races was simply too unreasonable. There was simply no way he could win. Not to mention winning, even if he wanted to survive against the other demigods of the other races, it would be extremely difficult. Even with the protection of the 5 of them, there were some attacks from the other races that were completely impossible to defend against. They could even silently kill Long Yu, who was by their side. Looking at it from this angle, Yu Fei felt that there was a high possibility that the eroding moon ancient domain had other arrangements for Long Yu. However, she couldn't rule out the possibility that Long Yu had come in a bit late, so she still had to wait for a bit. The others all followed her suggestion. After all, the death match was a race against time. If Long Yu didn't show up, they couldn't keep waiting. After all, if Long Yu showed up here again after they set off, he would definitely move toward the nearest starlight. He should be able to catch up with them. After waiting for about an hour, Long Yu still didn't show up. At this point, they were very clear that Long Yu must have been lost when the golden swirl sucked him in and teleported him. There was no need for them to wait any longer. The 5 of them finally set off for the real battle of life and death. Being 1 hour behind made them lose a lot of opportunities. It was very likely that the treasure closest to them would be taken away by other teams of new demigods of alien races in advance. They had to move forward as soon as possible. What they didn't know was that while they were waiting for Long Yu had already arrived in the dark and silent void. He was just not in the same corner as them. The place where Long Yu appeared was the center of the entire spherical void. Chapter 1562. Everyone else appeared at the outermost edge of the spherical void. That was because the 100 reward items were all set at the center of the spherical void. For the other new demigods, their goal was to obtain these reward items. As long as they obtained one, they could safely exit the deathmatch segment. Successfully stepping into the demigod realm and obtaining so many treasures was definitely a very good deal for the new demigods of foreign races. Even existences at the level of the golden 6-winged demigods would probably not take the risk to obtain more things in this spherical void, because the danger was too great. After all, everyone was a demigod, and all of them were new demigods. No one felt that their mastery of demigod power was better than the others. Basically, they would withdraw from this deathmatch segment as soon as they had the chance. It must be noted that those who could participate in the deathmatch segment were the elites of each race. Everyone wanted to leave alive, and no one wanted to die in the deathmatch segment of the eroding moon ancient domain. Many cultivators of different races had maintained the peak of the 7th phase Great Sovereign Realm for a long time. Now that they had finally stepped into the demigod realm, how could they be willing to die just like that? Therefore, survival was the top priority for all the new demigods participating in the deathmatch segment. But for Long Yu, his mission was to protect these 100 treasures. This was a message he received when he arrived at the center of the spherical void. However, this message did not make him frown. Instead, he seemed to be eager to try. Because the current Long Yu was no longer the previous Long Yu. As he passed through the suction force of the golden vortex, the flame god seal on Long Yu's forehead had already appeared. After the flame god seal was activated, not only did the golden power in Long Yu's body boil, but it also transformed his power into a kind of power called Golden Flame Divine Power. Be it the Netherworld Divine Script, the Dark Demon Divine Script, or other types of Divine Script, all of them were directly transformed into Golden Flame Divine Power. Golden Flame Divine Power was a power that only gods could use. Now, of course, Long Yu did not really master this power. He only temporarily obtained the right to use this power with the help of the Golden Vortex. But even so, it was enough to make him feel good. This was the power of a god. Now, he knew better than anyone else what the power of gods was like. The Golden Flame Divine Power was completely different from the powers he had comprehended before. This was the true divine power. Whether it was destructive power, creativity, or any other kind of ability, it had reached the peak that Long Yu could imagine. At this moment, not just the new demigods, Long Yu was confident to deal with the demigods of the older generation such as Flamboyant. With the fire divinity imprint, one would be able to activate the golden flame divine power. This divine power only belonged to one god, and that was the golden flame yang god. Every deity had their own origin divine power. This was the fundamental condition for a deity to become a deity. The golden energy Long Yu absorbed was the golden flame divine power. But now, the reason why Long Yu absorbed and comprehended this golden flame divine power before was because he had not activated the fire divinity imprint yet. Now, in the death match, the eroding moon ancient domain would activate the fire divinity imprint for him, so that he could use the golden flame divine power. After leaving the death match, the golden flame divine power of Long Yu would dissipate. But at that time, he would be able to slowly comprehend the golden flame divine power in his body. If he wanted to leave this spherical void alive, he naturally had to fight alien demigods one after another. The information that Long Yu received was that after all the new demigods left this death match, all the treasures left in the entire spherical void that had not been taken away would belong to him alone. This made Long Yu overjoyed. How could he not try his best? He could clearly feel that his current strength was not inferior to that of Consort Yu, who had stepped into the demigod realm. There was no reason for him to retreat. Besides, he would not have any chance to retreat. If he did not go out to stop the new demigods of alien races and create some trouble for them, it was very likely that many new demigods would gather at the center of the spherical void in the end. By then, if he was in the center, wouldn't he be besieged by all the new demigods of alien races? Besides, this was a good opportunity for Long Yu to familiarize himself with the golden flame divine power. However, I have become a flame giant now. Even if Consort Yu and the others see me, they won't be able to recognize me, will they? I wonder where they are. I'd better not run into them, Long Yu thought to himself. Right now, his whole body was wrapped in golden flames, and his body was much larger than before, showing the shape of a flame giant. Although he was in the shape of a human, with a head, arms, and feet, if Consort Yu and the others saw him, they would definitely not think that he was a human. That was a bit embarrassing. But fortunately, Long Yu's senses had become extremely sharp. Even the other new demigods could only perceive about 3,000 square meters in this spherical void with their spiritual senses. But Long Yu could reach 30,000 square meters. As the guardian of the entire spherical space, Long Yu naturally had some unique advantages. The perception range of his spiritual senses was 10 times wider than that of other new demigods, which was enough for Long Yu to handle with ease. The death match had officially begun. Long Yu did not take action immediately. Instead, he was thinking about something. Up to now, it could be said that he was the one who was closest to the gods in the entire human race and the demon race, but it was still too early to say that he had received the legacy of the so-called Golden Flame Sun God. He remembered that in the 7th level of the eroding moon ancient domain, he saw another 100 or so cultivators of various races who had successfully obtained the mark of the God of Fire. Most of those 100 or so cultivators came from different races. Long Yu did not believe that all of them were people from the future. There must be other people who had obtained the mark of the God of Fire earlier. Just the machine race, the six-winged race, and the sword race alone had a genius who had obtained the mark of the God of Fire in the past or in the future. This also meant that perhaps some races knew that he would become the protector of the entire deathmatch segment. It should be noted that there were many alien races who watched Long Yu kill 3 people who were bathed in golden light with the cultivation of a 5th phase Great Sovereign. Among them, the one that worried Long Yu the most was the Golden Six-Winged. Right now, Long Yu did not know if the Golden Six-Winged had stepped into the demigod realm and come to this space as a new demigod. But logically speaking, it was very likely that he would see the Golden Six-Winged in this void. If the other party knew, would they do this? Would they directly come to kill Long Yu? Not likely. the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into narrowed his eyes and thought about all the possible situations he might encounter. In any case, he was not very clear about the purpose of the golden flame sun god. But since he had obtained such a strong power, it was not bad to experience it first. And most importantly, he was currently in the form of a golden flame giant. Even if he killed those new demigods of the alien races, those alien races would not know that it was a kid from the human race who killed their genius new demigod. It was impossible for him to bring trouble to the human race. The time to do as he pleased had arrived. Long Yu could see that right next to him was one of the most precious prizes in this deathmatch segment. This prize was a pool of golden water, and within the golden water, there seemed to be a shining sun. Within the golden water, there were actually everlasting divine runes. The golden flame divine power would definitely not appear as a reward. However, eternal level divine characters were already the most powerful power that could be grasped other than God. And the shining sun in the golden water was impressively a source of divine characters. In the territories of the human race and the demon race, the source of divine characters were basically original divine characters. Even the territories of the human race and the demon race did not have the source of divine characters of the apocalypse level. Even if there was one more source of divine characters of the apocalypse level, the overall strength of the human race and the demon race would at least double. And in the race, more powerful existences would emerge. Not to mention, what kind of transformation would it be for the human race and the demon race if they obtained this source of divine characters of the eternal level? Unfortunately, right now, Long Yu could not directly take this thing into his pocket. He did not have the right to take these things away. He only had the right to kill the new demigods of the alien races. When all the new demigods left, the rest would belong to Long Yu. Therefore, there was only one path in front of Long Yu: kill. The worst-case scenario was that some powerful races knew the rules of the inheritance of the golden flame divine power and would unite. Therefore, Long Yu had to prevent this possibility. Right now, the other alien races should be rushing toward the center. It was a distance of 100,000 meters. It was not so easy to rush over. In this spherical void, Long Yu's speed was about 10 times faster than the others, so he still had a lot of time. When the other alien race's new demigods advanced for 100,000 meters, Long Yu could advance for 100,000 meters and set off from the center of the spherical void to meet the other party. However, Long Yu had to choose the right direction. Otherwise, if he ran into Consort Yu and the others, it would be a tragedy for his own people. Not only would it waste his time, it was very likely that Consort Yu and the others would attack him. Fortunately, the news that Long Yu received was that there were a total of 82 races participating in the entire deathmatch. Among them, 15 races only had one new demigod, so they could only participate. Otherwise, their race would not be qualified to enter the eroding moon ancient domain next time. Even if they died, they had to come in and try. For a race that only had one new demigod, they only needed to get one item, and they would be able to leave here safely and go home. Therefore, they had to approach the nearest reward item as fast as possible. 1 out of 82. The possibility of running into Consort Yu and the others is too small. I'll just choose a random direction. Thinking to himself, Long Yu, who had turned into the golden flame giant, finally moved. Chapter 1563. In the spherical void at the center of the great swirl in the eroding moon ancient domain, the golden fiery giant began to move. Every time a golden flame burst out from his back, he would be able to teleport 3,000 meters away. He was 10 times faster than the other newly advanced demigods in the void. Long Yu casually picked a direction and quickly headed in that direction. His target was the outermost starlight in that direction. The treasures at that distance were the earliest treasures that newly advanced demigods could get. So, there would definitely be competition. There might be competition, and there was a chance that the treasures would be monopolized. Long Yu was very fast. He believed that he could catch up. Also, his luck wasn't so bad. In that direction, there happened to be a newly advanced demigod who retreated after getting the treasures. The golden giant moved forward quickly in the void. The 200 or so newly advanced demigods of the 82 races all took action when Long Yu began to move. They all wanted to get the starlight, which was one of the 100 treasures in the deathmatch, as soon as possible. Consort Yu and the other 4 were probably the only ones who delayed for an hour to wait for Long Yu. But it was actually good for them, because if they set off a bit later, it would be even less likely for them to meet Long Yu. Long Yu kept moving forward. The golden flames glittered but soon disappeared. In the void, they could travel quite far, about 30,000 meters. That was not good news for Long Yu. This meant that other people would be able to see him from a distance of 30,000 zhang. Furthermore, the range of his spiritual sense just so happened to be 30,000 zhang. This situation was a bit awkward. When Long Yu could sense the other party could also see him. Of course, what the other party saw was the golden light that he emitted. Generally speaking, the newly advanced demigods couldn't know what the golden flames were. Even if they did, they would only make some regular combat preparations. Very soon, Long Yu moved forward for 90,000 meters. Then, he sensed that 2 newly advanced demigods of the alien race had indeed appeared in front of him. The 2 newly advanced demigods had already obtained a treasure and were moving deeper into the spherical void, hoping to obtain a second treasure so that they could all leave this place. At this moment, Long Yu sensed them, and they naturally saw Long Yu. However, they did not know what Long Yu was. The 2 newly advanced demigods of the alien race were still charging at Long Yu at their highest speed. Long Yu waited for them near the second treasure, and did not take the initiative to attack. In any case, Long Yu could teleport thousands of feet away. Even if he couldn't win, he could still escape. Moreover, he felt that it would be a piece of cake for him to deal with one of the consort Yu's existences. If there were 2 of them, it would be hard to say. It was exactly because of that he wanted to see if he could defeat the 2 new demigods of the alien race. Very soon, the other party approached. And in the process, Long Yu clearly discovered that the treasures that were shining with starlight around him were being taken away one after another. More than half of the 50 supreme quality creations at the outermost area had been taken away. There was nothing he could do about it. Even if Long Yu had obtained the divine power of golden flames and turned into a giant of golden flames, it was impossible for him to stop so many newly advanced demigods of the alien race at the same time. After all, he did not have the ability to clone himself at the moment. He was a giant of golden flames. He was no longer Long Yu, so he could not use tricks like the Devil Dust clone. As for the remaining half that had not been taken away, there must have been more than 2 kinds of alien race competing for the supreme quality creations, and the winner could not be determined in a short period of time. That was why the stalemate was so long. Long Yu still had a chance to rescue those supreme quality creations, however. For Long Yu, the most important thing was to face the 2 newly advanced demigods of the alien race in front of him. They were 2 aliens with metal spires. In the final chaotic area of the 5th area, Long Yu had once seen such an alien race. It was the guy who was fighting against the golden 6-winged, but he did not know what happened to him afterward. 2 of these aliens with metal spires had stepped into the ranks of the newly advanced demigods, but these 2 did not look like the one that Long Yu had encountered before. Perhaps that one had already been killed by the golden 6-winged. These 2 aliens with metal spires broke through the air, and each time they teleported, they could travel 100 feet forward. Not long after, they crossed a distance of 10,000 feet and arrived in the void not far from Long Yu. Next to where Long Yu was now, there was a revelation-level divine rune source. Of course, this divine runic source was sealed in some sort of golden liquid. It was the same thing that sealed the eternal divine runic source before. This golden liquid was able to store the divine runic source, allowing a cultivator to carry the divine runic source as an object. Long Yu had such a treasure with him. For the two aliens with metal spires in front of him, the value of this treasure was secondary. The key was that if they could get this treasure, both of them would be able to leave the battle alive. Only in this way could they make greater contributions to their own race as newly advanced demigod. It must be noted that any demigod was a precious resource for any race. Even for powerful races like the six-winged race and the mechanical race, the number of demigod experts among them was only in the 3 digits. Every life of one of them was extremely precious, not to mention for races like the human race and the demon race. If Consort Yu and the other 4 could all make it out alive this time, the overall situation near the territory of the human race and the demon race would be completely rewritten. Right now, there was bound to be a battle between Long Yu and the 2 aliens with metal spires. One of the 2 aliens with metal spires charged directly at the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into. At the same time, it split into 4 clones of metal spires. First, the 4 clones of metal spires came in front of Long Yu. The 4 clones of metal spires each displayed the primordial power of the metal class and condensed an extremely powerful binding array, trying to trap the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into. In this way, the 2 of them could directly take away the revelation-level divine rune source and choose to leave the battle alive. They regarded Long Yu as a newly advanced demigod of another alien race. However, seeing that Long Yu did not take away the revelation-level divine rune source, the 2 aliens with metal spires were also extremely cautious. They felt that this golden flame giant was probably very strong, so they did not directly surround Long Yu but chose to delay him. The 4 clones of metal spires came to the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into. However, as soon as Long Yu raised his hand, the divine power of golden flames suddenly burst out and condensed into 4 pillars of fire that broke through the air. Every pillar of fire accurately hit one of the clones of metal spires. Before the other party's binding array could fully take effect, the 4 metal spires had already been completely blown into pieces. This scene shocked the aliens with metal spires who were preparing to take the revelation-level divine rune source. They sensed the violent power in the 4 pillars of fire of Long Yu and immediately knew that Long Yu was not someone that any of them could deal with. They either had to work together to deal with Long Yu, or one of them would run away. However, they had finally reached the demigod level. How could they be willing to run away just like that? Besides, if one of them stalled Long Yu, and the other took the opportunity to withdraw from the deathmatch, who would stall Long Yu? The one who came to stall Long Yu would definitely be seeking death. On the other hand, the other person would be able to leave this void and become the winner through the supreme grade creation item that he had obtained previously. No matter what, these 2 metal spires would not be willing to die. Their final choice was to work together and fight. This result somewhat surprised Long Yu. Seeing that the 2 metal spires actually launched an attack at him at the same time, the primordial power of metal burst out extremely dazzling light. This was the other party's divinized ability. One of the metal spires was a divine ability of the outsider race. It used the power of the metal element to form a huge golden staff, which smashed down towards Long Yu. Behind this huge golden staff, there was actually a huge golden pagoda shadow. A golden stick emerged from the shadow of the golden pagoda and instantly landed on the head of the golden flame giant. In the next moment, it looked like it was going to smash Long Yu into a meat patty. However, Long Yu did not waver at all. He raised his hand, and the golden flame giant's arm suddenly rose with a burst of golden flame divine power, instantly smashing the golden stick into pieces. The power of the other party's divinized golden stick was much stronger than the dragon breath of the 9 underworlds that Long Yu had used against Consort Yu. Most importantly, the density of the other party's power was much stronger than Long Yu's when he was a 5th phase dominator. At that time, the power in Long Yu's body compared to that of the demigod Consort Yu's was like the difference between cotton and steel. But now, the power of the metal spires was also like the difference between cotton and steel when compared to the golden flame divine power that Long Yu possessed. However, the power of the metal spires was equivalent to cotton, while the power of Long Yu's golden flame divine power was like steel. This difference in the density of the power caused a huge difference between the two. It seemed that from the moment one stepped into the demigod level, what cultivators pursued was no longer the size of the power, but the degree of density of the power. But now, the golden flame divine power that Long Yu had turned into a golden flame giant was undoubtedly much denser than the power of the demigod foreign race. Long Yu smashed the golden stick with a punch, and then his body flashed. Golden flames flashed, and his huge body directly appeared in front of the metal spires, crossing a distance of 600 meters in an instant. This caused the non-human with the metal spire to be shocked. How could this golden flame giant cross a distance of 600 meters in the space of the eroding moon ancient region? This was illogical. Chapter 1564. Long Yu did not give the other party a chance to be surprised. The golden flame divine power condensed on his golden flame giant's fist, and he suddenly punched at the other party. If this punch hit, the other party would definitely die without a burial place. With the density of the golden flame divine power, it could completely break through any of the other party's defenses. However, the other party's reaction was extremely fast. After all, it was an existence that had just become a demigod. Whether it was combat experience or reaction speed, it was completely impeccable. When this metallic spire alien saw the golden flame giant flashing in front of it, it immediately activated the power of the divine rune of space, and then flashed back a distance of 100 feet. That was not all. In order to prevent Long Yu from continuing to chase after it, it directly flashed again. At the same time, a white light flashed on top of the metallic spire alien's head. This meant that this metallic spire alien had actually chosen to retreat. The supreme grade creation item that they had just obtained was actually on this metallic spire alien. At this moment, it seemed that because it had witnessed the power of the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into, it was unwilling to fight against Long Yu. It actually chose to escape. This made the other metallic spire alien extremely furious. There was no doubt that the feeling of being betrayed at such a critical moment was not a good one. The key was that it had been a little slower at that time, allowing the supreme grade creation item to be taken by the other party. Of course, there was no reason to take out something that had been taken away. However, the other metallic spire alien did not just sit and wait for death. Seeing that Long Yu had gone to chase after its companion, it directly flew to where the source of the divine rune of revelation was. It wanted to take away the source of the divine rune and then immediately retreat from this place. After all, it was too dangerous to stay. From the punch of the flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into, they could all tell that Long Yu's level was at least one level higher than theirs. Just like a demigod was one level higher than a seventh-phase great ruler, they were one level lower than Long Yu. However, what they didn't know was that although Long Yu was powerful, he didn't have any special means. Whether it was divine ability, martial skill, or martial Dao secret method, he didn't have any special means. So if they really wanted to fight, they still had a chance to win if they joined forces. Unfortunately, Long Yu's punch directly stunned them, and they didn't dare to continue fighting with Long Yu. They didn't even think about this problem. If he could walk, he would. There was no need to sacrifice for nothing. This was the decision made by the first alien with a metal spire. It had no choice but to abandon its companion. If it didn't leave, the two of them wouldn't be able to leave. Now that it had chosen to retreat, it had given its companion a better chance, a chance to obtain the divine rune source of the divine rune. That way, it would have a higher chance of escaping. Unfortunately, this metallic spire alien was too naive. Once they split up and acted alone, they wouldn't be a match for Long Yu at all. They wouldn't even be able to last for 10 breaths of time. teleportation. Long Yu instantly teleported to his opponent's side. He didn't even condense much energy. The golden flame giant directly punched out, instantly sending his opponent flying. He could feel that his opponent's metal elemental absolute beginning energy had condensed into a defensive barrier, which was shattered by this punch. Then, Long Yu continued to follow up. It was such a simple golden flame fist, yet it was impossible for the opponent to block it. Long Yu didn't pay attention to the metallic spire alien that wanted to take away the divine rune source of the divine rune. Because the metallic spire alien in front of him had chosen to retreat first, Long Yu could only deal with it first. Of course, Long Yu's idea was to not let any of them escape. The golden flame giant that Long Yu had turned into had a very simple attack pattern. It was just one punch after another. In reality, he couldn't completely kill the opponent with one punch. After all, the opponent's defense was very strong. Therefore, if another alien that had just become a demigod came to harass and attack him, it would be very difficult for him to take care of it at the same time. Unfortunately, in order to survive, the opponent had forcibly turned their alliance into a fight of their own. Perhaps they thought that they could resist Long Yu's strong attack for 10 breaths. It could only be said that the opponent had lost because they didn't know what kind of state Long Yu was in right now. If they knew that Long Yu was just a half-baked guy who couldn't even use martial arts techniques, they probably wouldn't have given up so easily. In the face of death, the two metallic spire aliens had to compete for the right to survive. These two metallic spire aliens were both about 15 meters tall. They looked like standing octopuses or squids, except that they didn't have as many tentacles. Also, their bodies glowed with a metallic luster, as if they were made of some kind of metal element. The flame giant that Long Yu had turned into was also about 15 meters tall, which was equivalent to the height of a 4- or 5-story building. The two sides fought in the void. Every few rounds, Long Yu would completely blow up the metallic spire alien with a punch. Even the power core inside its body was burnt up. The next moment, he focused his attention on the other metallic spire alien. That metallic spire alien had already received the Enlightenment level divine rune source 3 breaths ago and directly chose to retreat. At this moment, in another 7 breaths, it would be teleported out, and it would be able to survive. Seeing that its companion was completely killed by Long Yu with a few punches, it felt a sense of schadenfreude. Who told it to abandon it and run away? It didn't expect this giant to be so terrifying that it could kill one of them with a few punches in these 3 breaths. It had directly teleported a distance of 1,000 meters. In its opinion, even if this flame giant could teleport further, it could at most teleport 2,000 meters. If it could by some time, it should be able to get out alive. Unfortunately, it guessed wrong. The maximum distance that Long Yu could teleport was 3,000 meters, which meant that he could reach the enemy in an instant. Long Yu didn't hesitate. After killing one of them, he teleported to the other one and waved his fists again. Without any suspense, Long Yu killed the new demigods of the two metallic spire aliens. It was a super great feeling. If possible, he would like to take this opportunity to eliminate the new demigods of the possible hostile races. For example, the alien races such as the Ice God Clan and the Fire God Clan that were his enemies, and the other powerful races in the Langia Space Zone, such as the Divine Water Race, the Silver Stone Race, the Soul Race, and the Abyss Race. However, it was a pity that Long Yu didn't know if there were new demigods of these races. Even if there were, he didn't know where the new demigods of these races were. This was probably arranged by the god spirits in the eroding moon ancient region. It was impossible for a successor to the god throne like Long Yu to take revenge on a personal grudge in the deathmatch segment. Otherwise, every successor to the god throne would be able to get rid of the majority of their hidden opponents in such a deathmatch segment. Their future would be smooth and there wouldn't be too much of a threat. This was also quite disadvantageous to the cultivation and growth of the heir to the throne. After killing the two metallic spire aliens, Long Yu found that the supreme quality creation item and the enlightenment level source of divine rune that they had taken away had dropped out again, but they didn't shine with starlight again. Long Yu gave it a try and found that he was actually able to keep both of these items in his bag. Although the Golden Flame Giant couldn't use divine abilities or martial skills, it still had an empty little world. After killing those foreign races and obtaining treasures, it could reclaim those treasures as its own. This made Long Yu instantly overjoyed. In this way, he seemed to be able to obtain more treasures than he had expected. Every item inside was priceless. Among them, the cheapest supreme quality creation item was rumored to be able to cultivate a demigod, which showed how much energy it contained. And the enlightenment level source of divine rune was even more valuable. Although the enlightenment level source of divine rune couldn't cultivate a demigod, it could allow more people to comprehend the enlightenment level source of divine rune and increase their combat strength by several times. For a race or force as a whole, its effect was definitely far greater than that of a supreme quality creation item. In other words, the enlightenment level source of divine rune was more effective than a demigod expert. This wasn't strange. After obtaining the enlightenment level source of divine rune, it was very likely that more experts with the potential to step into the demigod level would emerge among the races and forces, which was equivalent to providing a powerful reserve force for the races or forces. At least for now, there wasn't a single enlightenment level source of divine rune in the territories of the human race or the demon race. It could be seen that in the previous rounds of battles to the death in the eroding moon ancient region, the human race and the demon race had never been at an advantage. Now that Long Yu had appeared, it was a great change for the human race and the demon race. However, it was impossible for Long Yu to give everything he obtained here to the human race and the demon race. He would definitely keep a large portion for the Void Galaxy. For Long Yu, developing the human race and the demon race was not as important as developing his own forces. It should be noted that the development of the Void Galaxy would be his own strength. But if the human race and the demon race developed too much, would they listen to Long Yu? It was even possible that there would be a conflict with Long Yu. After all, the population in the territories of the human race and the demon race was too large, too diverse, and too chaotic. It was too much for Long Yu to control. In order to fight for the right to survive, the two aliens with metal steeples were killed by Long Yu one by one, and the treasures they had obtained were taken away. Then, Long Yu set his sights on the light of a treasure nearby. That place was about 60,000 feet away from where Long Yu was, but the treasure light in that direction didn't disappear for a long time. It was clear that the battle there was very fierce. If Long Yu rushed over now, he could fish in troubled waters. Chapter 1565. There were nearly 200 new demigods from 82 races. It was naturally difficult for them to compete for 100 treasures. On average, 1 out of every 2 new demigods would die in the battle. Moreover, there was an existence like Long Yu in the eroding moon ancient region this time. It was even more disadvantageous for the other new demigods of the alien races. No matter what, even if it was just to get more treasures, Long Yu had to kill as many new demigods of the alien races as possible. Moreover, some powerful alien races might know of an existence like Long Yu. After all, many seventh-phase dominators of the alien races had seen Long Yu leave the chaotic area with the cultivation of a fifth-phase dominator. The six-winged race was one of them. Moreover, the six-winged race might have informed the other races. In that space, Long Yu saw a genius of the six-winged race, the sword race, and the machine race who had obtained the mark of the god of fire. However, he didn't know whether it was in the past or in the future. If it was in the past, then they would definitely know the current situation of the deathmat. Long Yu might still encounter danger. Not to mention anything else, even if 3 new demigods attacked him at the same time, it would be very difficult for him to resist. Although his teleportation speed was very fast and could be 10 times faster than the other new demigods. If those new demigods of the alien races used some tricks to trap him, he wouldn't be able to escape. Long Yu was very clear about this. Therefore, when he rushed to the treasure spot that was 60 kilometers away, he was extremely cautious. When he was about 30 kilometers away from the treasure spot, he first sensed the situation there. This was also one of his advantages. He found that there were 3 new demigods of the alien races there. During the chaotic battle, there were a total of 8 new demigods. The 3 of them seemed to have some sort of grudge against each other. Whenever they met, they would fight each other fiercely, not giving the other side any chance to live. Furthermore, none of the foreign races were able to take the treasures on the treasure point. The 8 new demigods of the alien races restrained each other. The battle was extremely fierce. Among them, 2 alien races seemed to have obtained the ultimate creations at the edge. They still participated in the battle in the second treasure spot for the sake of the other 2 new demigods of their race. They wanted to bring them out alive. The golden flame giant Long Yu had transformed into had appeared tens of thousands of feet away. Naturally, he had been noticed by them. But none of them paid any attention to Long Yu. This was because those who were thousands of meters away from them could not affect their battle. Now they were already in a killing frenzy and had reached an extremely crucial moment. Long Yu approached them unhurriedly. As he approached, he observed the battle of the 8 new demigods of the alien race and learned more and more about the way each of them fought. It was something that the new demigods did not know at all, because their own senses could only sense the specific situation within a range of 3,000 feet. Who would know that Long Yu, the golden flame giant, could sense the situation within a range of 30,000 feet? The 8 new demigod aliens were from 3 different races. They were not from the Langia space zone. However, this did not stop Long Yu from treating them as his targets. After all, if he could kill these 8 guys, Long Yu would be able to take back 3 more treasures. Of course, taking back these 3 treasures would be much more difficult than taking back the 2 treasures just now. If he was not careful, he might even die here. It all depended on how Long Yu fought. In any case, he was equivalent to a brute with immense strength. He didn't know any martial skills or divine abilities, so he had to be a bit more careful when fighting. Most importantly, he did not know how strong the golden flame giant body that he had transformed into could take. Although the golden flame divine power was strong, the body of the golden flame giant was not necessarily strong. Once the new demigod aliens found a loophole and directly hit the golden flame giant, it was very likely that Long Yu would be injured or even killed. Besides, he did not know what would happen if he were to die in the golden flame giant state. Would he really die? Or could it be that his consciousness could return to his own body? Everything was unknown. Therefore, he did not dare to take the risk. He teleported a distance of 300 feet at a time and slowly approached the chaotic battle area. He was not in a hurry. He couldn't speed up even if he wanted to, because he didn't want those guys to find out that he could teleport 3,000 meters away. This would be one of the things that he could rely on when he chased after those alien demigods later. Long Yu's goal was to take the 3 treasures, not to kill the new demigod aliens. Therefore, there was no need for him to rush up and kill them. He would let them kill each other first. The 8 new demigod aliens did not seem to be admiring the golden flame giant that was gradually approaching. Each of the 3 races had at least 2 new demigod. A single golden flame giant was really not a threat to them. However, they still paid a little attention to it. Each of them must be deducing what might happen later. When Long Yu was about 15,000 feet away from the treasure spot, one of the 8 new demigod aliens was finally completely killed. An ultimate item of creation on its body also fell out and fell into the hands of another alien race's new demigod. Fortunately, there were a total of 3 aliens. Having obtained 2 supreme quality creations, they did not choose to leave. Instead, they began to approach the treasure spot with all their might. The 3 new demigods of the alien race were all gathered together, and they seemed to be invincible. This alien race with 3 members left was the abyssal race that Long Yu had a slight impression of. The abyssal race was different from the abyssal race. The reason why the abyssal race was named was because of their racial ability and talent. They could create a space-time abyss and were born with a special sense for the power of space divine characters. As for their appearance, they looked like black worms. However, these black worms were very huge, and each one was 10 meters long. In front of them, the human race was completely insignificant. The 3 abyssal race worms quickly advanced toward the treasure spot. The other 4 new demigods that belonged to the 2 races quickly blocked the way of the 3 abyssal race worms. Of course, they would not let the abyssal race succeed so easily. Therefore, the 2 different races had joined forces at this moment. One of them was from the illusionary butterfly race, an alien race that was good at mental attacks. The 2 demigods of the alien race that looked like blue butterflies had already set up layers of formations condensed from the primordial power of wood in that space. The illusionary butterfly race originally had 3 members here, but one of them had just died in the hands of the abyssal race. Therefore, it was not hard to imagine their determination. They would definitely not let the 3 abyssal race pass smoothly and obtain the treasure on the treasure spot. That treasure seemed to be a modified divine source item. The so-called modified divine source item was an existence that surpassed ordinary divine source items. Its power was several times greater than ordinary divine source items. Long Yu's small golden sword was just an ordinary divine source artifact. The treasure on the tip of the sword was made up of blood-red threads that intertwined with each other. It was a modified divine source artifact, and its power was several times greater than that of the small golden sword. As for who had modified this type of god source item, no one knew. Anyway, this was a very good treasure. Its value was no less than that of a revelation-level divine source. Needless to say, if the abyssal race obtained this modified divine source item, the 3 of them would all be able to leave this place alive. The other alien race was the Black Mist race that Long Yu had seen before. He had killed an extremely strong Black Mist race. In the advancement area, the 2 Black Mist race that he saw now were probably not as talented as the one he had killed. However, these 2 Black Mist race had already stepped into the demigod level after receiving the opportunity. They were much stronger than the Black Mist race that he had killed. The Black Mist race was also a race that was good at mental attacks. When they worked together with the illusionary butterfly race, it produced excellent results. The Black Mist race hid in the mental attack formation of the 2 illusionary butterfly race. When the abyssal race worm passed through the formation, it suddenly exploded. When the 2 parties worked together, they directly produced extremely strong destructive power. The mind and soul of one of the abyssal race worm were instantly heavily injured. This situation made Long Yu feel that something was wrong. This was because he realized that the abyssal race worm whose mind and soul were heavily injured happened to be the one that did not have an ultimate creation item. The other 2 that were not injured each had an ultimate creation item in their hands. In other words, they could choose to leave at any time. This seemed to confirm Long Yu's guess. When one of the abyssal worm's spirit and soul were severely injured, the other 2 abyssal worms immediately chose to abandon their severely injured companion and quickly retreated. At this time, Long Yu was about 6,000 feet away from the treasure point. The 2 abyssal race worms happened to retreat in the direction where Long Yu was, which made Long Yu heave a sigh of relief. In this way, it would not be so easy for the other party to escape. The heads of the 2 abyssal race worms flashed with white light. It seemed that they were going to escape. How could the illusionary butterfly race and the Black Mist race allow this to happen? The 4 new demigods came from different directions and followed the 2 fleeing abyssal race worms to where Long Yu was. However, the abyssal race worm whose mind and soul were heavily injured was still trying its best to rush toward the treasure point. Unfortunately, its mind and soul were heavily injured, and it could no longer use many of its techniques. It was even a little delirious. It couldn't even tell the direction. The other demigods didn't bother to pay attention to this guy. The distance between Long Yu, the fleeing abyssal raceworm, the illusionary butterfly race, and the black mist race was rapidly decreasing. The abyssal raceworm could even see the approaching golden flame giant, but they did not panic. In their eyes, Long Yu was just a new demigod, and it was very difficult for him to kill them both in 10 breaths. Chapter 1566. In fact, these two worms of the abyssal race communicated with each other and seemed to be preparing to join forces to deal with Long Yu. 2 against 1, it seemed like their chances of victory were very high. In any case, they were about to leave this part of the void, and it would not be a bad idea to kill one of the aliens before they left. The only thing they found strange was that they did not seem to have seen the golden flame giant race during the battle in the Eclipse Moon Ancient region. Of course, there were so many races participating in the Eclipse Moon Ancient region, so it was normal that they had not seen them before. The 2 abyssal worms were ready to make their move. This just happened to be in line with Long Yu's intentions. There was no doubt that these 2 abyssal worms would not be a match for Long Yu in a head-on confrontation with Long Yu. Long Yu had been watching them fight from afar. They all used Shadow Element and Space Element God text powers. A few revealed God texts were used to cast deified God powers, and the damage they could inflict would be very high. Long Yu had watched them fight from afar. But it was still impossible to fight against Long Yu. A shadow light wave shot out from the shadow of a giant worm. This was the divinized god art of one of the abyssal worms. This shadow broadcast almost tore space apart. With the addition of the giant worm's shadow behind it, it exploded with extremely terrifying destructive power. If it were Long Yu's real body here, he would probably be killed 1,000 times in an instant because he could not withstand it at all. But now, he raised his hand and threw a punch at the shadow light wave. Golden flame divine power condensed on his fist, and with a terrifying explosion, the shadow light wave was actually smashed in half by his fist. The golden flame divine power spread in all directions, and the golden flame giant took advantage of the momentum and directly jumped in front of the abyssal worm. There were only 5 breaths left. Long Yu was originally nearly 700 feet away from the other party, but it was already too late. If he wanted to retrieve the 2 supreme-grade creation items, he had to teleport over in one go. The 2 abyssal race worms were shocked by this. They had never imagined that the golden flame giant in front of them could actually jump 700 meters in one go. This made them recall a rumor they had heard from other races. In the eroding Moon Ancient region, if someone could pass through the final 5th region with a cultivation of less than the 7th phase Great Ruler, it was possible for them to obtain a true god's inheritance. The guy who received the heritage of the gods, on the other hand, would become the incarnation of the gods and show up in the rounds of life and death battles. The incarnation of the gods would boast the power and abilities that surpassed all the other new demigods. Right now, all the newly advanced demigods could only teleport 300 meters away in one go. However, the golden flame giant before him had instantly crossed 7,000 feet. Didn't this mean that this fellow might be the incarnation of a god? Run! Without any hesitation, the 2 abyssal race worms fled in 2 different directions. One of them flew upwards while the other flew downwards. Their reactions were extremely fast. There were still 4 breaths left. Long Yu did not intend to let any of them go. The golden flame giant once again gathered golden flame divine power in its fist, and then its entire body teleported in front of the abyssal clan worm above. 1 punch. 2 punches. The golden flame divine power quickly devoured the abyssal clan worm. When there were only 2 breaths of time left before the abyssal clan worm could be teleported out, it was completely killed by Long Yu. The supreme grade creation item directly fell out, and as for its corpse, it was also retrieved by the eroding Moon Ancient domain. In 2 breaths and 2 punches, a newly advanced demigod worm of the abyssal race was killed. There was still another one left. If there were no accidents, he would be able to kill it in 2 breaths. Without any hesitation, Long Yu teleported down again and directly crossed a distance of 400 to 500 meters. 1 punch, 2 punches, he punched the other abyssal race worm. The golden flame divine power roared and filled the entire void. The abyssal race worm wanted to resist with all its might, but whether it was the shadow attribute divine power or the space attribute divine power, it could not delay Long Yu at all. This was because Long Yu could teleport in another direction at any time and avoid the enemy's defense. After 2 punches, the golden flame divine power suddenly burst out and completely swallowed the abyssal race worm. Another supreme grade creation item dropped out. When these 2 ultimate creation items fell out, the remaining 2 members of the fantasy butterfly race and the 2 members of the black mist race had different ideas. However, seeing that the golden flame giant, Long Yu, was so powerful, they naturally did not dare to have any ideas. They were all a little hesitant. Should they just leave like this, or should they fight with Long Yu? Soon, they made a decision. One of the members of the black mist race directly flew toward the first ultimate creation item. It wanted to get that ultimate creation item as soon as possible and then choose to leave this void. After all, the black mist race had very high attainments in the spiritual aspect. It might be able to stop the golden flame giant for 10 breaths. Anyway, if it did not get that creation item, it could not leave, so it might as well buy some time. The other member of the black mist race directly flew toward the abyssal race worm, whose spirit had already been seriously injured. It wanted to kill that fellow and then obtain the right to leave this space. Although it could not get any treasures this way, it could at least survive. As for the 2 members of the fantasy butterfly race, their situation seemed to be better than that of the black mist race. Because when one of the illusionary butterflies discovered that Long Yu could teleport 700 meters away, a white light directly appeared above his head. This newly ascended demigod of the illusionary butterfly race had killed his companion, so he had the right to choose to leave. Originally, there were 3 members of the fantasy butterfly race in the chaotic battle. One of them was seriously injured by the abyssal race worm and was on the verge of death. At the critical moment, this member of the fantasy butterfly race took the initiative to extend its tentacles and completely kill its companion. This might be a very good method in the death round. While not letting the opponent escape, it would give its companion a chance to leave this space. When Long Yu saw this scene, he was quite shocked. The dead member of the fantasy butterfly race did not resist at all. It seemed that it had been killed by its companion on its own initiative so that its companion could escape. It was truly rare for someone who could become a demigod to have such a fearless spirit. Anyway, this was the first time that Long Yu had seen such a self-sacrificing demigod. The other member of the fantasy butterfly race, on the other hand, went straight to the treasure point thousands of meters away. The ball of entangled blood-red silk threads was a modified quasi-divine source item. It definitely had great power and might be able to stop the golden flame giant for a while. The 4 surviving new demigods of the alien race each used their own means. The only thing they wanted was to survive. No matter how strong Long Yu was, he was only one person after all. If he wanted to kill a new demigod of the alien race, it would also take time. It would be very difficult for him to kill all 4 of them in front of him. And Long Yu's choice was naturally to prioritize those treasures. Almost without any hesitation, Long Yu made up his mind to kill the closest member of the Black Mist race first. That member of the Black Mist race wanted to get a share of the first ultimate item of creation that fell out. Of course, Long Yu would not allow it. As soon as it flew over and snatched the ultimate item of creation, a white light appeared above its head. Obviously, it immediately chose to leave this space. However, Long Yu flashed and arrived next to that member of the Black Mist race. He directly punched out. This punch carried the intense divine power of golden flames. If it was in existence like the worm of the Abyss race from before, it would probably be seriously injured by one punch, and it would be completely destroyed by the divine power of golden flames after 2 punches. Chapter 1567. Long Yu persistently used the golden flame divine power and soon killed the black mist race completely. He then took the creation treasure of the highest quality. This time, he had obtained 2 supreme-grade creations. His harvest was not bad. Although 2 of the phantom butterflies and 1 of the black mist had been set free, and the modified quasi-divine source item had been abandoned, it was already a very good result. It must be noted that there were 8 new demigods of alien species on this battlefield at the beginning. With Long Yu's current ability, it was almost his limit to take back 2 of the 3 treasures, and this was under the condition that the other party was more cooperative. Long Yu put the 2 ultimate creation items into his pocket. Then he flew to the next treasure spot. He looked around. In the entire void, the starlight of at least 50 treasure spots had disappeared, which meant that more than 50 treasures had been taken away by the new demigods of alien races. Among these 50 treasures, close to 40 of them were top-grade creations. The ultimate creation items were at the outermost layer, closest to the treasures of the new demigod. Therefore, in comparison, these ultimate creation items disappeared the fastest. They were basically taken away by the alien races and then left this space. It was impossible for Long Yu to keep all the treasures. It was already very impressive for him to keep 1/3 of the treasures when he was facing so many new demigods of alien races alone. Moreover, he might not even be able to keep 1/3. In the entire spherical void, the 100 treasures were divided into 5 layers. The outermost layer was, of course, the ultimate creation items. There were 50 of them in total. Then, there were the treasures of the second level. There were a total of 20 treasure points. Among these treasures, there were transformed divine source treasures, divine rune sources at the revelation level, and even some special pills from ancient times. The effects of these pills were definitely far stronger than the 8 extreme blood pill that Long Yu had taken. Among these 20 treasure spots, more than half had been taken away. Long Yu's next target was not the treasure points on the 2nd floor, but the treasure points on the 3rd floor. There were a total of 15 treasure points on the 3rd floor, and the treasures there were more precious than those on the 2nd floor. Some new demigods of the alien races had already reached the 3rd floor, which meant that they had advanced about 40 to 50,000 meters. Long Yu flew directly to the nearest treasure spot on the 3rd floor. The starlight of the treasure spot flickered twice, which meant that a new demigod of the alien race was fighting there. As a result, the treasure would appear and disappear from time to time. When he disappeared, he was absorbed into the small world by the new demigod of the alien race. Once the new demigod of the alien race was killed, the treasure would drop out again and be obtained by other alien races. How many outsiders were fighting over there? When he was 10,000 meters away, Long Yu directly teleported 3,000 meters and quickly approached. When he was within 10,000 meters, he began to slow down and teleport 100 meters in one go. At the same time, he began to sense the situation of the battle near the treasure spot. When Long Yu arrived within 100,000 feet of the location of the treasure, the situation there immediately caused him to be startled. It was actually Consort Yu and the others. Consort Yu, Frost, Imperial Wind, Long Zai Tian, and Lang Qing Shuang. The 5 of them were extremely fast and had already reached the 3rd treasure spot. The treasures from the previous 2 spots had clearly been taken by the 5 of them. In other words, among the 5 of them, at least 2 of them could choose to leave at any time. However, Long Yu didn't know how many of the 5 of them had killed new demigods of the alien races. Seeing that they hadn't left yet, the 5 of them should have killed no more than 3 of the alien races. Otherwise, 2 plus 3 would have been enough to force the 5 of them to leave this place. Without any hesitation, Long Yu teleported 100 meters in one go and flew towards the 5 of them. Consort Yu and the others' opponents were from the 2 alien races. These 2 alien races had quite a few new demigods. Right now there were 4 and 5 of them respectively. However, seeing that the treasure spot had flashed before, there should have been some alien races that had died nearby. He didn't know what the situation was like at the beginning. In any case, right now, the shining treasure was in the middle of the 3 races. No one could go and take it. After all, there were 3 races on the battlefield. If any of the races wanted to take the treasure, the other 2 races would attack them. Consort Yu and the others were the same. If they made a move, the other 2 races would definitely join hands to deal with them. If that happened, they definitely wouldn't be able to resist. Long Yu was very clear that if he appeared in front of Consort Yu right now, she wouldn't be able to recognize him. Therefore, if Long Yu wanted to approach them and help Consort Yu and the others, he would have to use some trick. After all, he couldn't just charge at them directly. Otherwise, it was very likely that he would be attacked by Consort Yu and the others. Because right now, it was very likely that Consort Yu and the others were only short of 1 treasure or 1 head, and the 5 of them could all leave this space. Under such circumstances, if they saw that Long Yu was alone, it was still possible that they would target him. If he was attacked by the 5 of them together, it would be really miserable for Long Yu. After all, he couldn't fight back. He could only run. If he ran, his ability to teleport 3,000 meters in one breath would be discovered. Then, if he wanted to attack the other 2 alien races and the 9 new demigods in total, their opponents would be very vigilant. All in all, Long Yu was taking a detour. He took a detour in the void and became closer to the direction of the other 2 alien races' new demigod. In such a way, it should be impossible for Consort Yu and the others to target him. This time, Long Yu's target was a little different from before. Before, he wanted to keep as many treasures as possible, but this time, his target was to protect and support Consort Yu and the others from the side, at least so that they could leave this space first. On the other hand, Long Yu didn't want other alien races to see the relationship between him and Consort Yu and the others. Otherwise, it would probably cause greater trouble in the territory of human beings and demons later, which was something that Long Yu didn't want to see. He took a detour from where Consort Yu and the others were and gradually approached the location of the treasure. The other 2 alien races' new demigods, which made up 9 new demigods in total, were also very cautious at this moment. Naturally, they had noticed Long Yu who was approaching and taking a detour, and they were somewhat vigilant about the golden fiery giant who was alone. However, they didn't know what the golden fiery giant was, so they didn't pay much attention to it. After all, each of their species had 4 or even 5 new demigod. A single golden fiery giant shouldn't be able to deal with them. At this moment, Long Yu seemed to have noticed something. These 2 different alien races seemed to have started to target Consort Yu and the others. It seemed that it was only because these 2 alien races were both from the Wild Sand Space Zone and had met each other a few times. One of these 2 alien races was the Silk Race. The appearance of the Silk Race was a long silk thread. On one end of the thread was something that looked like a brain, and on the other end was the core of their power. The divine characters that they used contained the divine characters of 8 different attributes. Their methods were extremely strange. There were 5 new demigods of the Silk Race in total. The other alien race was the Cloud Shell Race. This race looked like a shell. At first glance, one could tell that it had an extremely strong defense. Its physical body was one of the best in the 3-star areas around the eroding moon ancient region. Perhaps only the Machine Race and the Abyss Race could compete with it in terms of physical strength. On the other hand, the Cloud Shell Race also had the divine characters of 8 different attributes. Their abilities were diverse, just like the human race and the demon race. They had a wide range of development, so it was rather difficult to deal with them. This was because every individual of the Cloud Shell race possessed different powers. There were a total of 4 new demigods of the Cloud Shell race. One of them had already been killed by Yu Fei and the other 4 just now, which was why the current situation was like this. When Long Yu was 15,000 feet away from the treasure point, the Cloud Shell race and the Silk race finally decided to work together and kill Consort Yu and the others first. After all, the Cloud Shell race and the Silk race were both races from the Wild Sand Space Zone, while the Human race and the Demon race were from the Langia Space Zone. In comparison, they naturally chose to work together with those that they could trust. As a result, Consort Yu and the others immediately fell into a terrible disadvantage. The 9 new demigods of the alien race attacked the 5 of them from all directions. Both the Cloud Shell race and the Silk race had individual abilities that were not inferior to the Human race or the Demon race. 1 or 2 of them were even stronger than Consort Yu and the others. After all, they were geniuses who could pass the test of the eroding moon ancient region and step into the demigod level. The 9 new demigods of the Cloud Shell race and the Silk race basically had the power of the 5 elements at the beginning of time, as well as the divine characters of 8 different attributes. They had various ways of attacking, but they had one thing in common. That was, it was very difficult to defend against the attacks of the other party. Long Yu, who was approaching from afar, suddenly became nervous. This situation was really beyond his expectations. The Cloud Shell race and the Silk race had actually worked together and wanted to kill Consort Yu and the others first. This had completely messed up his previous plan. Now, he could directly teleport over and help Consort Yu and the others kill the 9 new demigod aliens, or he could act according to the original plan. But if he did that, it was very likely that 1 or 2 of Consort Yu and the others would die. After all, it was 9 new demigods who had gathered together to attack them. 9 demigods was the strongest force that any of the Human race or the Demon race had right now. Among the Human race and the Demon race, there were only 7 demigod experts in total. But now, Consort Yu and the others were faced with 9 new demigods of the alien race. Also, they did not know much about the Cloud Shell race and the Silk race. On one hand, they were not familiar with their fighting style, and on the other hand, they did not know where their vitals and weaknesses were. If they only focused on the core of the opponent's power, the opponent would definitely have a strong psychological defense. Without relevant fighting experience, Consort Yu and the others were restricted in the battle. Faced with the first wave of attacks, Consort Yu and the others could only choose to defend. Chapter 1568. After becoming a demigod, Consort Yu's demonic and immortal energy had become much denser. However, right now, Long Yu didn't know how to describe the density of her energy. After all, Long Yu hadn't become a demigod yet. He didn't really understand some of the terms used in the demigod realm. However, at the same time that she leveled up, the other new demigods also leveled up. The 4 new demigods of the Cloud Shell race and the 5 new demigods of the Silk race surrounded Consort Yu's group of 5 from all directions. All kinds of attacks came one after another. One of the new demigods of the Cloud Shell race was covered in terrifying flames. He casually waved a powerful fire elemental revelation level character and swept it towards Frost. Frost's divinized god art instantly exploded. She had already obtained 6 ice essences and had absorbed 6 of them into her natural god art fruit. Now, 3 of her god arts had become divinized as well. With the 2 stacked together, her strength had increased to an unimaginable level. A blizzard swept out of Frost's body and instantly enveloped her and the space around her. In this blizzard, the Cloud Shell race demigod that had activated the Fire Elemental Revelation level character couldn't do anything to her. The Fire Elemental Revelation level character quickly dissipated in the blizzard. Frost wasn't harmed in the slightest. On the other side, the 2 new demigods of the Silk race teamed up and attacked Imperial Wind. One of the silk race used a shadow elemental technique, while the other used a light elemental technique. The two powers, one white and one black, clashed with each other. But because they clashed with each other, when they combined, they were able to explode with such terrifying power. Both the shadow elemental and light elemental divine characters were revealed level characters. What Yu Feng was using was also a deified god art. He moved, and countless hurricanes and tornadoes appeared. These hurricanes and tornadoes enveloped the shadow element and light element silk race beings, shadow element and light element silk race beings. This was the elemental power of the wind elemental divine characters. Although it was rare, its power was extremely terrifying. The three kinds of energy mixed together, causing the space in the area to almost explode. Imperial Wind and the two demigods of the Silk race were directly forced out of the main battlefield, and a small battlefield was opened up. Those who could become demigods, be it the aliens in front of them or the Imperial Wind Consort U's team, had all grasped the revelation runes. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so easy for them to kill 3 opponents in a row in the final chaotic battle in the 5th zone. A revelation divine rune was the most basic requirement. As for the more advanced Eternity Divine runes, they could only be obtained in the Eroding Moon Ancient Domain. Very few people could comprehend them in the Eroding Moon Ancient Domain, like Long Yu did. Right now, Long Yu's mind has already been engraved with the mysterious runes recorded on the gray stone. Therefore, his comprehension speed towards all kinds of powers has already surpassed ordinary people. Moreover, there aren't many similar rewards in the entire Eclipse Moon Ancient region. Even if there were other mysterious runes, once they were engraved in his mind, they would produce different effects. Apart from Long Yu, there was basically no one else who could comprehend the Eternity Divine runes in a short period of time. But there were always exceptions to everything. Right now, Long Yu felt the aura of the Eternity Divine runes, and the scene exploded with shock. That aura actually belonged to Long Zai Tian. With the Eternity Divine runes on his body, Long Zai Tian's figure instantly grew, turning into a 10-meter-tall giant. Golden dragons circled around him as he faced off against the 2 demigods of the Silk race by himself. The golden dragons circled around Long Zai Tian. Whenever the enemy's power approached him, it would be completely devoured by the golden dragons and turned into Long Zai Tian's own power. The golden dragons were one of Long Zai Tian's Divine Eyes divine abilities. With the help of the Eternity Divine runes, Long Zai Tian was the most relaxed person present. He faced off against the 2 demigods of the Silk race by himself and completely suppressed them. Without a doubt, among the 5 of Consort Yu's group, Long Zai Tian's strength could be said to be among the best. Before entering the Eroding Moon Ancient region, everyone was about the same. But after leaving the Eroding Moon Ancient region, there was a clear gap between them. Of course, people like Consort Yu, Frost, and the others had obtained some treasures in the Eroding Moon Ancient region, but they hadn't had the time to turn those treasures into their own combat strength. Right now, they didn't seem to be as good as Long Zai Tian. If they could make it out alive, the situation would definitely change after a while. Consort Yu's demonic immortal energy allowed her to fend off the 2 demigods of the Cloud Shell race by herself. However, it was rather difficult to defend against them. These 2 demigods of the Cloud Shell race had respectively grasped the Eternity Divine runes of the fire and ice element. When they worked together, they were quite powerful. It was relatively easy for Consort Yu to fend off one of them with her demonic immortal energy, but when 2 came at her at the same time, it was rather difficult for her to fend them off. The remaining Langqing Shuang had long since transformed into a giant green wolf. This was his demonic body. At this moment, he was constantly howling and relying on the power of the sound element divine runes to fend off the demigod of the Cloud Shell race and the demigod of the Silk race. In the chaotic battle between Langqing Shuang and these 2 demigods, it wasn't exactly 1 versus 2. The demigods of the Cloud Shell race and the Silk Race did not completely trust each other, so the pressure on Lang Qingshuang was much less than that of the others. Of course, less pressure did not mean that there was no danger. On the contrary, Lang Qingshuang was actually the more dangerous one. This was because the demigods of the Cloud Shell Race and the Silk Race were still suspicious of each other. If Lang Qingshuang was even slightly injured, then the demigods of the Cloud Shell Race and the Silk Race would definitely kill Lang Qingshuang first without any hesitation. Long Yu was still approaching. He did not teleport 10,000 feet in one go. Instead, he maintained a distance of 300 feet per teleportation. At first, he really wanted to hurry over, but then he discovered that Consort Yu and the others were actually doing well. They were not being suppressed by the 9 demigods of the alien races, which was a blessing in disguise. This was especially so for Long Zitian. He actually had such great power that he was able to suppress the 2 demigods of the Silk Race. This was truly out of Long Yu's expectations. However, if this continued, it would not be a good idea. After all, although Consort Yu and the others could fend them off for now, they could not fight back at all. It would be extremely difficult for them to kill any one of them. Long Yu had to go up and help. If the golden flame giant that he had transformed into entered the battlefield, he would definitely seize the opportunity to instantly kill one of the alien races. At this moment, Long Yu could sense which of the 4 demigods of the Cloud Shell Race and the 5 demigods of the Silk Race was carrying a treasure from the void. This allowed him to confirm the target that he needed to instantly kill. Apart from helping Consort Yu and the others escape successfully, Long Yu's goal in this battle was to obtain as many treasures as possible. Therefore, if he could choose, he would naturally choose the demigods of the alien races who were carrying treasures. When Long Yu was less than 3,000 feet away from the battlefield, he discovered that the battle closest to him was actually between Lang Qingshuang and a demigod of the Silk Race and a demigod of the Cloud Shell Race. At this time, it was too late to take a detour, and there was also no need to do so. The demigod of the Silk Race was carrying a treasure. If Long Yu could kill it, then that treasure would drop. If this treasure was obtained by one of Consort Yu and the others, then one of them would be able to leave at any time. In any case, right now they had 2 treasures on them. One of them had killed a demigod of the Cloud Shell Race. Consort Yu had a treasure, and so did Frost. As for who had killed the demigod of the Cloud Shell Race, Long Yu didn't know. In any case, if he killed the Silk Race now, Lang Qingshuang would very likely obtain that treasure. If that happened, then it would be very beneficial to the overall situation. Without any hesitation, Long Yu flew directly towards Lang Qingshuang's battlefield. The appearance of the golden flame giant caused Lang Qingshuang, the demigod of the Silk Race, and the demigod of the Cloud Shell Race to become nervous. At this time, the 3 of them actually formed a simple alliance and stood in 3 different positions. Each of these 3 positions could immediately attack Long Yu. This Lang Qingshuang. Forget it, there's nothing I can do. Long Yu felt a bit awkward, but he couldn't reveal his identity as Long Yu right now. This was because the golden flame giant couldn't speak or send out telekinesis. He had no way of notifying anyone else. No matter what, he had to get rid of the demigod of the Silk Race first. He raised his golden fist and flashed over the last 300 meters, crashing toward the demigod of the Silk Race. When Lang Qingshuang saw this, he didn't rashly attack the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into. Instead, he retreated a bit. It was already difficult for him to deal with 2 demigods working together. Seeing this situation, he was naturally very happy. In the beginning, he had subconsciously become wary of Long Yu, which was why he had stood with the 2 demigods. But now that he saw the golden flame giant attack the demigod of the Silk Race, there was no need for him to get involved. Lang Qingshuang naturally knew that the Silk Race member had a treasure on her. Thus, he didn't retreat too far away. Instead, he paced around the Silk Race and the golden flame giant. So smart. Long Yu couldn't help but praise him inwardly. Then, the golden fist landed on one end of the demigod of the silk race. There was no telling whether that end was the core of the demigod's power or the head, but the golden flame divine power directly smashed it into pieces. One had to know that this was the golden flame divine power. The density of power already surpassed that of these new demigods, not to mention that the golden flame giant was actually so strong. But the demigod wasn't killed directly. The life force of demigods was very strong, and most importantly, they had a lot of tricks up their sleeves. Chapter 1569. The silk demigod's head had been blown off by Long Yu's punch, but the destruction of its head was unknown. White light radiated from its body. This was the power of some kind of revelation-level divine text of light. At the same time, a godly absolute beginning item flew out. It was a godly absolute beginning item in the shape of a stone, and it radiated an extremely strong aura of life. The power of the divine text of life. After the stone flew out, it completely disintegrated and turned into the purest power of the revelation-level divine text of life. It melted into the body of the silk race demigod, whose head had been blown off, and its head was reconstructed once again. It was just like how Long Yu had cultivated the devil dust heart. Even if its head was directly blown off like this, it could instantly reconstruct it. It was impossible to cause any fatal damage to it. But now, the silk demigod had clearly sensed how terrifying Long Yu was after taking this blow from Long Yu. It actually chose to retreat without any hesitation. Apart from the divine text of life that was still glowing white above its head, the white light that indicated that it would retreat from the eroding moon ancient region after 10 breaths also flashed. This situation shocked the other demigods around. This golden flame giant was actually so strong that it could scare the silk demigod into retreating with just one punch? This was undoubtedly a warning to the remaining silk demigods. At the same time, both the Cloud Shell clan and consort you were extremely wary of this golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into. The silk demigod definitely wouldn't choose to retreat so easily. Because its companions were still here, it wouldn't choose to retreat unless it was absolutely necessary. But now, white light was flashing above its head. In other words, it felt that it would die if it didn't retreat. This was the only possibility that could scare the silk demigod into immediately retreating. This also showed how strong the golden flame giant was. Lang Qingshuang was now a little hesitant. Should he go up and prepare to covet the treasures on the silk demigod? Right now, he was in an excellent position. The silk race member chose to retreat as far away from the golden flame giant as he did so. This direction happened to be where Lang Qingshuang was. He could totally block the silk race demigod's escape route, but if he did that, the golden fiery giant would very likely target him next. In that case, it would be impossible for Wolf Bluefrost to retreat even if he wanted to. Because he had no treasures on him, and he had never killed any alien demigods, he was not qualified to quit. Because of this, Lang Qingshuang was a little hesitant. However, Long Yu didn't care what Lang Qingshuang was thinking. He simply chased after the silk race demigod, raised his fist, and punched at the other end of the silk race. Terrifying golden flame god power slammed into the silk race again. Long Yu didn't show that he could teleport more than 1,000 feet because he was chasing after the silk race being. It didn't matter if he or Lang Qingshuang killed the silk race being. The next moment, the silk race actually left behind an afterimage where it had been standing. No, it wasn't an afterimage. Instead, it looked more like it had shed its shell, like a viper shedding its skin, leaving behind a layer of snakeskin. This silk race had used some sort of technique to cause the layer of skin that it had left behind to erupt with a powerful tearing force, binding the entire golden flame giant. The silk race member itself continued to flee into the distance with a white light above its head. One could sense that after the silk race member had chosen to shed its skin, it seemed to have become much weaker. Killing it would undoubtedly be much easier. Its direction of escape began to diverge from Lang Qingshuang's. This also gave Lang Qingshuang a message. This Silk Race member was afraid of him. Lang Qingshuang glanced at the Golden Flame Giant. The Golden Flame Giant that Long Yu had transformed into was temporarily entangled by the Silk Race's shedding skin and couldn't escape. This was the perfect opportunity for him to kill the Silk Race member. Of course, this was an opportunity that Long Yu had intentionally created for Lang Qingshuang. If he wanted to, he could break through the entanglement of the shedding skin at any time. After all, the Golden Flame Divine Power was very strong and could easily burn the shedding skin to ashes. But he didn't. Instead, he pretended to be trapped and waited for Lang Qingshuang to kill the Silk Race demigod. That way, no matter what the situation was like before, Consort Yu and the others would definitely be able to leave safely. Long Yu thought that since the Silk Race member was already so heavily injured, Lang Qingshuang shouldn't have a problem dealing with it, right? Very soon, Lang Qingshuang caught up to the Silk Race demigod, just as Long Yu had expected. But what happened next made Long Yu's heart sink. This was because the Silk Race demigod had actually reserved some extremely powerful techniques and hadn't used them yet. The Silk Race demigod had actually taken out a quasi-divine source item in the shape of an iron lock, a modified quasi-divine source item. Clearly, this was the treasure that the Silk Race demigod had obtained in this space. At this moment, it actually used it directly. This quasi-divine source item in the shape of an iron lock completely entangled Lang Qingshuang's main body as soon as it appeared. Then, the iron lock actually exploded with an extremely dense power that was even stronger than the power of a demigod. This situation completely stunned Lang Qingshuang. He didn't expect this at all. The Silk Race actually had a final trump card. This quasi-divine source item in the shape of an iron lock contained an extremely powerful sealing power, and the density of the power was extremely high. It completely suppressed the power inside Lang Qingshuang's body. He had also obtained a quasi-divine source item, and he had also awakened a level 12 absolute beginning divine source item. At this moment, he used all of these techniques without any hesitation. The quasi-divine source item was something that looked like a bamboo stick connected together. Now that he activated it, it immediately shot out like a goddess scattering flowers. His absolute beginning divine source item was a wolf fang sword. After it flew out of his little world, it directly exploded with a level 12 awakening skill. 5 wolves devouring the sun. 5 giant wolf demon phantoms appeared in the nearby void and suddenly emitted a terrifying aura. This was a level 12 absolute beginning divine source item awakening skill of a demigod. The 5 giant wolf demon phantoms immediately bit onto the iron lock that was entangled around Lang Qingshuang's body. The iron lock glowed red and tightly trapped Lang Qingshuang's main body. He couldn't use any of the power inside his body, nor could he use any of his natural technique. He could only rely on quasi-divine source items and absolute beginning divine source items. The 5 wolves devouring the sun and the string of bamboo sticks almost completely destroyed the modified quasi-divine source items, but they were still a little short and couldn't completely get him out of his predicament. Then, the Silk Race demigod released a burst of white light. This wave of white light covered almost everything in the surrounding space, and then landed on Lang Qingshuang's body with a loud rumble. This was an attack that targeted the mind and soul. There was no suspense. After all of Lang Qingshuang's power was sealed, he could only endure the opponent's soul attack. He had also cultivated some kind of secret martial arts technique that could block part of the soul attack. But now, the opponent's attack was just too strong. It was so strong that even Long Yu couldn't react in time. Long Yu ignited his golden flame divine power and escaped from the shed skin. He wanted to teleport over to help Lang Qingshuang, but it was already too late. Lang Qingshuang's entire body was covered in white light. Without any pain, Lang Qingshuang's mind and soul were instantly destroyed. His physical body was left, but it was immediately taken back by the eroding moon ancient domain. The golden flame giant that Long Yu turned into didn't stop. Right now, Lang Qingshuang's death was already a foregone conclusion. He couldn't change it, and he didn't want to see more people die. Whether it was Consort Yu, Frost, Imperial Wind, or even Long Zai Tian, Long Yu didn't want to see any of them die. The fiery giant arrived abruptly and flashed 7,000 meters away, reaching the demigod of the Silk Clan who was struggling for its last breath. Then, the fist burning with golden flame divine power smashed down towards the Silk Race demigod. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, the elementary modified quasi-god source artifact was directly locked onto Long Yu's body, causing his entire body's strength to enter a sealed state. This lock glowed red, and its sealing effect on power was terrifying. Its suppression power surpassed that of a normal demigod, and it wasn't far off from Long Yu's golden flame divine power. This made it so that Long Yu couldn't even use his golden flame divine power. He could only watch as the Silk Race was teleported out of the eroding moon ancient domain when the time was up. At the same time, the lock-type divine source item was also teleported out. As a treasure that the Silk Race had obtained, it was sent out. Long Yu cursed in his heart. This Silk Race wasn't as simple as it had been before. It had managed to learn how to use this divine source item in such a short period of time, and it had used all sorts of methods to trap the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into. It had even killed Lang Qingshuang before leaving. With such intelligence, no wonder he was a true demigod. It could only be said that although Lang Qingshuang had stepped into the demigod realm, he had too few trump cards. Compared to a true expert, he still couldn't fight back. It was just like the 7 demigods of the human race and the demon race. If they were asked to deal with the super demigods of the machine race, the 6-winged race, and the sword race, they definitely wouldn't be able to defeat them, because their background was different, and their opponents were stronger. For Long Yu, this was a complete accident. If he hadn't pretended to be trapped by the molting, he would still have had time to help Lang Qingshuang. Although this would expose that he was on the side of the human race and the demon race, it was still better than losing a demigod, right? Every demigod was an extremely precious treasure for the human race and the demon race. Chapter 1570. After the accident with Lang Qingshuang, Long Yu decided to use his full strength. Previously, he was still scheming here and there in order to obtain as many treasures as possible. But now, it seemed that if he continued to scheme, even Concubine Yu and the others might encounter an unexpected accident. It had to be known that these were all demigod experts. Every single one of them was a top genius of their race. They were definitely not weaker than Consort Yu and the others. Lang Qingshuang had died completely because Long Yu had underestimated these new demigods of alien races. It turned out that none of them were to be trifled with. Long Yu would not let something like this happen a second time. Even if it was exposed that he had teamed up with the humans and demons, so what? In any case, he was in the form of a golden flame giant now. It was impossible for the other party to know his true identity unless he encountered the golden 6-winged being. Only then would some information be exposed. Right now, he was only facing the Cloud Shell race and the Silk race. At the end of the day, these two races were not very strong. At least, they could not compare to the Machine race, the Sword race, and the 6-winged race. Long Yu did not see any cultivators of the Cloud Shell race or the Silk race in the space where he had obtained the God Seal of Fire. This also meant that Long Yu did not need to be afraid of them. Kill! Without any hesitation, Long Yu charged toward the closest Cloud Shell race member after the Silk race member disappeared from his sight. The Cloud Shell race member that had attacked Lang Qingshuang with the Silk race member. Seeing that Long Yu's flame giant was approaching, the Cloud Shell race member hurriedly fled toward the main group. This Cloud Shell race member did not have the right to choose to retreat. Long Yu did not show any mercy. The next moment, he teleported 8,000 feet away and appeared in front of the Cloud Shell race member. The demigod of the Cloud Shell race was shocked. Just now, he had discovered that this golden flame giant could actually break through the teleportation limit of 1,000 feet in the eroding moon ancient region. He already had a bad feeling about this, and now, he felt that a great disaster was about to befall him. Thankfully, the other two demigods of the Cloud Shell family directly gave up on attacking Concubine Yu and came to reinforce the demigods of the Cloud Shell family. 3 against 1. This time, the 3 demigods of the Cloud Shell family seemed to have noticed something about Long Yu. Ever since the fiery giant appeared, it had only been waving its fists non-stop. As long as one was agile enough, one could totally dodge such attack. Therefore, the 3 Cloud Shell demigods wanted to work together to kill Long Yu. Unfortunately, how could Consort Yu let her opponent slip away just like that? Since they wanted to deal with the flame giant together, Consort Yu was happy to help the flame giant kill the 3 Cloud Shell race beings. Or rather, she only needed to kill one of them. Now that Lang Qing Shuang was dead, although Consort Yu was a little depressed, she still had to fight for the remaining 4 to escape. Now, he only lacked a head or a treasure. You guys go first. At this time, Long Zitian roared. He could see how powerful the fiery giant was and did not want Consort Yu and the others to take the risk. Thus, he wanted Consort Yu and the others to escape first. When Long Yu heard Long Zitian's roar, he knew that the 3 people in the dojo apart from Long Zitian had the right to leave this place. Since that was the case, as long as Long Zitian obtained a treasure or killed an opponent, the remaining 4 people from the human race and the demon race could all leave. However, it was clear that Consort Yu did not listen to Long Zitian. She continued to chase after the 2 demigods of the Cloud Shell family. She had a feeling that the fiery giant in front of her was here to help her. This feeling was definitely not groundless. From the fiery giant's actions just now and its behavior after Lang Qing Shuang's death, it was very likely that the fiery giant was connected to the human race and the demon race. This fiery giant was undoubtedly special. After all, it could directly teleport a maximum distance of 10,000 feet, which was 10 times what ordinary demigods could do in the eroding moon ancient region. This special characteristic just happened to correspond to Long Yu's special characteristic. Long Yu had participated in this deathmatch segment. Consort Yu was certain that she had even been thinking about how the eroding moon ancient region had arranged for Long Yu after the deathmatch segment began. It was possible that he had followed them to fight. However, after entering, she had waited for an hour for Long Yu, but he was nowhere to be seen. Thus, Consort Yu was very certain that the eroding moon ancient region had other arrangements for Long Yu. Now that the fiery giant had appeared and combined with its various behaviors, Consort Yu could not help but guess that this fellow could be Long Yu. This possibility was not high. However, Consort Yu could not help but think in this direction. Perhaps it could be said that it was a woman's intuition. After all, she was very familiar with Long Yu and they understood each other quite a bit. The fiery giant in front of her really did make Consort Yu see a bit of Long Yu's shadow. No matter what, Consort Yu had decided to work with the fiery giant to kill the 3 demigods of the Cloud Shell race. Since she had the bold idea that the fiery giant was Long Yu, she naturally had to think of a way to verify it. If it was true, then it was very likely that she could help Long Yu in some way. On the other hand, Frost and Imperial Wind had a treasure on them and the latter had killed a demigod of the Cloud Shell race, so they both had the right to leave. After hearing Long Zitian's shout, a white light appeared above their heads, which meant that they would be transported out in 10 breaths of time. Consort Yu did not leave. She charged towards the 2 demigods of the Cloud Shell race. Demonic immortal chi condensed and actually formed 9 shining black and white stars in the air. This aura was actually a god's martial skill. From the looks of it, consort, you had also obtained many benefits in the eroding moon ancient region and had learned many technique. The 9 brilliant stars was the god's martial skill that consort you had obtained. Now that she was using it for the first time, although she had only cultivated it to the minor mastery realm, it still filled the entire field with a destructive aura. The 9 shining black and white stars directly surrounded the 3 cloud shell race members. A terrifying power instantly exploded, and the black and white gas instantly corroded the bodies of the 3 cloud shell race members. Even Long Yu stopped. The power of a demigod combined with a god's martial skill was definitely an existence that could destroy the heavens and the earth. Although Long Yu was very sure that his golden flame giant body could withstand it, there was no need for him to try. He had to pay attention at all times to see if a demigod of the Cloud Shell clan would suddenly go on a rampage or use some powerful technique to threaten Concubine Yu. To be honest, it would be fine if Lang Qing Shuang died. At the very least, Long Yu did not recognize her. But if Consort Yu died here, he probably would not be able to forgive himself for the rest of his life. It had to be known that he and Consort Yu were inextricably linked. The only reason he was able to have what he had today was because Consort Yu had carved the mark of the dragon of the 9 underworlds into his chest from the very beginning. Furthermore, Long Yu still had a question that he had not asked Consort Yu clearly. Back then, why had Consort Yu chosen Long Yu to be a chess piece in the 9 underworlds realm? Long Yu was certain that his coming from Earth to this world had nothing to do with Consort Yu. This was because Consort Yu did not have the ability to pull people from a completely different time and space. But Consort Yu had sensed that he was different. Back then, she had gone to the divine battle world in the 9 underworlds realm and carved the mark of the 9 underworlds on his chest when he was a child. This was a little thought-provoking. No matter what, Long Yu would not let Consort Yu die. When the power of the 9 brilliant stars burst out, the 3 demigods of the Cloud Shell race each used their own techniques, trying to block this terrifying god's martial skill. At this moment, Long Yu seemed to see the scene of the Black Tiger demigod and the dragon-winged demigod fighting against the other 3 demigods on the alien race's battlefield again. Right now, Consort Yu and the demigods of the Cloud Shell race were already at the same level as the Black Tiger demigod and the ostentatious demigod, except that they had fewer divinized techniques than them. Their basic strength was not much different. The destructive power of the various techniques that they used could already be on par with each other. One of the 3 demigods of the Cloud Shell race activated the Berserker symbol and created a golden Berserker defense shield. This turned out to be a god's martial skill as well. However, it was only at the beginner level and could not block Consort Yu's 9 brilliant stars. But then, in the small world of the other demigod of the Cloud Shell race, 3 pieces of absolute beginning quality appeared. This guy actually had 3 pieces of absolute beginning quality. 2 of the pieces of absolute beginning quality condensed defensive barriers and appeared under the golden Berserker defense shield, forming 3 layers of defense and completely blocking the terrifying destructive power of the 9 brilliant stars. The other absolute beginning divine grade item disappeared from where it was. Watch out! Long Yu could only roar this in his mind. He could not really warn Consort Yu. But at this moment, he had already moved. The enormous body of the golden flame giant directly appeared in front of Consort Yu. He reached out and grabbed the black ball-shaped absolute beginning quality with his giant hand that was burning with golden flames. This piece of absolute beginning quality was condensed with an extremely strong explosive power. The demigod of the Cloud Shell race was basically trying to use the self-destruction of this piece of absolute beginning quality to cause some damage to Consort Yu. Even if it could not kill her completely, it could at least seriously injure her. Long Yu did not know if Consort Yu had sensed the danger or not. Anyway, he directly moved and did not give her any chance. In his hand, the golden flame divine power suddenly flowed. He exerted force and immediately crushed the black ball-shaped absolute beginning quality. This situation almost made the demigod of the cloud shell race collapse. It was not easy for it to obtain its 3 pieces of absolute beginning quality. It was not like some geniuses who were born with them. Instead, it was condensed through a special secret technique and countless hardship. It originally wanted to sacrifice one of its pieces to kill or seriously injure one of its opponents so that it would have the right to withdraw. It did not expect that its piece of absolute beginning quality would be directly crushed by the golden flame giant. Chapter 1571. When the golden flame giant that Long Yu turned into teleported over and crushed the godly absolute beginning item, Consort Yu was almost certain that her guess was correct. This golden flame giant was definitely on her side. Even if this golden flame giant wasn't Long Yu, it was still related to Long Yu. Anyway, it was something that the Eclipse Moon Ancient Region had arranged. It was either Long Yu or something that was controlled by Long Yu. Consort Yu was very happy now. Since she was sure that the golden flame giant was on her side, many things would be much easier to handle next. After Long Yu crushed a godly absolute beginning item, he immediately disrupted the 3 cloud shell demigods' plan to kill Consort Yu. Then, he charged straight to one of the cloud shell demigods, raised his fist, and gathered boundless golden flame divine power before landing it on the demigod's body. The demigod of the cloud shell race seemed to be the weakest of the 3, but at this moment it unleashed an extremely terrifying power when it was on the brink of death. A layer of light blue water vapor spread out from its body, and patterns appeared one after another on the surface of the blue water vapor. This was an illusion pattern. If it was Long Yu's original body, he would basically not be affected by such an illusion pattern. However, he was currently in the form of a golden flame giant, and the secret martial arts technique of the body of pure world was basically ineffective. Almost in an instant, Long Yu's spirit was pulled into this light blue illusion pattern. He felt that he had come to a light blue world, and water vapor kept coming out from his surroundings. Then, he was completely trapped in this illusory space. Long Yu knew that the situation was not good. He immediately erupted all the golden flame divine power in his body, closed his eyes, and then let the golden flame divine power slanted forward. Without any suspense, Long Yu's eruption instantly broke the illusion pattern. Then, he blasted the cloud shell demigod that had cast the illusion pattern away. The golden flame divine power corroded its body and destroyed at least half of its physical body. The cloud shell demigod's illusion pattern was indeed powerful, but its physical strength and defense were not very good. After Long Yu got close to it, it was seriously injured. The other 2 members of the cloud shell race wanted to help, but Concubine Yu had recovered her wits and used her immortal demonic chi to activate the divine spirit martial technique. The 9 brilliant stars were completely trapped, so they had no chance to help. When Long Yu and Consort Yu worked together, their combat ability was actually very strong. The main reason was that Long Yu had turned into a golden flame giant and blocked in front of them, giving the 3 cloud shell demigods too much pressure. They did not have the time to pay attention to Consort Yu's attacks. In reality, Consort Yu's attack could not be ignored. After all, the 9 brilliant stars was a divine spirit martial technique, and it was cast with extremely dense divine spirit martial technique. It was not that easy to block. Long Yu took advantage of the situation and attacked. Since he had beaten the cloud shell demigod half to death, there was no reason for him to let it go. Seeing that the golden flame giant and Consort Yu were cooperating so well, the remaining cloud shell demigods and silk race could not help it anymore. They could confirm that this golden flame giant was together with the human race and the demon race. Otherwise, how could they have such tacit understanding? Could it be that they were all races from the Langiastar zone? Or could it be that this golden flame giant was some kind of special existence? The Cloud Shell clan and the Silk clan had never seen such a situation before, so they had no way of determining the current situation. However, one thing was certain: the Golden Flame Giant was extremely powerful. If they were to fight it head-on, none of them would be its match. Thus, in this kind of situation, the alliance between the Cloud Shell and Silk race immediately collapsed. The newly ascended demigods of the Cloud Shell race and the Silk race, who had the right to withdraw, chose to withdraw right away. The others began to band together and surround Long Zai Tian. Right now, Long Yu and Consort Yu were working together, so there was no way they could break through. Long Zai Tian was quite far away by himself, so they could try. If they could kill him, then they would have a chance to retreat from this deathmatch area. As for Frost and Imperial Wind, white light had just flashed above their heads. Without a doubt, they were about to be teleported out. On top of that, the two of them weren't weak either. Now that they were working together at such a crucial moment, killing either Frost or Imperial Wind wouldn't be an easy task. If they had to kill them in the next few breaths of time, then it would be impossible for them to do so. Thus, this caused Long Zai Tian to bear the most pressure alone. Long Yu and Consort Yu did not pay attention to him for now. Instead, they first killed the 3 demigods of the Cloud Shell race. Then, they went to help Long Zai Tian. At this time, Long Zai Tian could not hold on any longer. Fortunately, Long Zai Tian's strength was slightly stronger than that of a normal new demigod. His golden dragon coiled around his body, making his defense very strong. Although his opponents were several new demigods of the foreign races working together, they could not deal any fatal damage to him. With the arrival of Long Yu and Consort Yu, the situation immediately became one-sided. The foreign races were not a match for the 3 of them working together. Concubine Yu and Long Zaitian were very strong in the first place. Together with the Golden Fiery Giant, whose strength far exceeded that of a new demigod, they could basically kill any of the new demigods of the alien races instantly if they were to attack them together. Although Long Yu was not very willing to work together with Long Zai Tian, it had to be said that with him here, the battle had become much easier. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for him and Consort Yu to clean up the battlefield. It was very likely that some of the demigods of the foreign races would escape. Frost and Imperial Wind had just been teleported out. Before leaving, the 2 of them seemed to have a very good relationship with each other. They did not seem to be as hostile as they usually were in the Demigod Academy. After all, at this time, they were standing on the same side and fighting against the new demigods of the foreign races together. Moreover, if they made it out alive, they would become demigods of the human race and the demon race together. They would definitely work together more than they would fight against each other. The 2 of them were a bit surprised by the Golden Flame Giant's help. They were also very smart. From the way the Golden Flame Giant, Consort Yu, and Long Zai Tian worked together, it was impossible for the Golden Flame Giant to not have any relationship with Long Yu. Because if it was any other foreign race, they would not be so at ease leaving their backs to Consort Yu. This made Frost and Imperial Wind a bit regretful. If they hadn't left and cooperated with the Golden Flame Giant, they might have been able to obtain even more treasures from this spherical void. It has to be known that every treasure in this place was a true godly item. It was something that could not be obtained in the outside world. But since they had already chosen to leave, of course they could not stay. They could only pray that Consort Yu and Long Zai Tian would be able to obtain even better result. If that happened, the overall strength of the human race and the demon race would become even stronger. This was also very beneficial to them. Not long after, Long Yu, Consort Yu, and Long Zai Tian worked together and killed all the remaining Silk Race and Cloud Shell Race members. In the end, a total of 2 Silk Race demigods and 1 Cloud Shell Race demigod escaped. This was something that could not be helped. These new demigods of the foreign races all escaped separately and were transported out of the eroding moon ancient region. It would be very difficult for Long Yu and the other 2 to stop them all. After all, these foreign races were all demigod-level existences. Each of them had some pretty good life-saving method. Wanting to kill each other in 10 breaths of time was not a 100% success rate. After cleaning up the battlefield, Long Yu left all of the treasures he had obtained to Consort Yu and Long Zai Tian. Apart from the three of them, there were no other creatures present, so he could do this without worry. Although the golden flame giant that he had turned into could not communicate with Consort Yu and Long Zai Tian, what he had done was enough to win the deepest trust of the two. Apart from Long Yu's incarnation or control, who else would hand over the precious treasures that they had obtained? Only his own people would do such a thing. Then, this golden flame giant was 100% certain that there was a certain connection between Long Yu and himself. Consort Yu and Long Zai Tian, on the other hand, wanted to continue following Long Yu to deal with the other new demigods of the foreign races and fight for more treasures. However, Long Yu did not give them the chance. He waved his hand and asked Consort Yu and Long Zai Tian to leave first. The following battle would definitely be even more dangerous. If it was just Long Yu alone, he could directly teleport away if he could not win. However, if he brought Consort Yu and Long Zai Tian with him, it would really be very troublesome when he fell into a predicament. After the golden flame giant left behind a few treasures, it directly teleported towards the center of the treasure spot. In one move, it had teleported a distance of 3,000 meters. Consort Yu and Long Zai Tian, on the other hand, were a little worried about Long Yu. However, seeing that Long Yu had left so decisively, they had no way of following him. In this space, their speed was only 1/10 of the golden flame giant's. Whether it was hurrying or fighting, they could not keep up with his footsteps. If they could keep up, Long Yu did not mind letting them follow along. After all, the more people, the stronger the battle strength. They could also leave this area at any time. There was danger, but it was not too great. Unfortunately, what Long Yu was going to do next was very fast. After fighting here, he would move to another place. The speed of teleportation definitely could not keep up with him, so he could only let them retreat first. As for Long Yu, although he had just won a battle, he was not too careless. Just now, it was just the treasure spot on the 3rd floor. As he went further and reached the treasure spot on the 4th floor, the opponents he would encounter would obviously be even stronger. Just now, he had encountered some relatively strong opponents, such as the powerful demigod of the Silk race who had instantly killed Lang Qingshuang and the demigod of the Cloud Shell race who had 3 absolute beginning divine quality treasures. Next, there would definitely be even more experts that exceeded his expectations. In particular, Long Yu was very worried about running into that golden 6-winged creature. Chapter 1572. After Consort Yu and Long Zai Tian left, they quickly saw Frost and Imperial Wind. They were originally waiting in the preparation area. They didn't know how long it would take for Consort Yu, Long Zai Tian, and Long Yu to come out. They didn't think that Consort Yu and Long Zai Tian would come out so quickly. He didn't want us to follow him. He's too fast. After Consort Yu came out, she saw Frost and Imperial Wind's confused expressions. She sighed and explained. That's not bad. He appeared in the form of the Golden Flame Giant. Or perhaps he's controlling the Golden Flame Giant. No matter which it is, after encountering other races, they won't think of us humans or Yao. Long Zai Tian said in a low voice. Right now, let's just wait for him to come out. I believe that he won't die in there. Right now, his strength is stronger than ours. Let's first organize the resources we got this time. After we go back, we can all be considered leaders of the human and Yao races. There are some things that we need to prepare beforehand. Imperial Wind said in a clear voice. His voice was very encouraging. He was the type of person that was born to be a leader. This time, he stepped into the demigod realm. His strength increased by quite a bit. Most importantly, he obtained quite a few good things. If the 4 of them added up, they would have 4 top-grade creation items alone. Top-quality creations were rumored to be existences that could create a demigod. Thus, the four of them were all thinking about who they should give this top-quality creations to. Consort Yu thought of her own candidate. Apart from containing extremely rich creation energy, the most important function of a supreme-grade creation item was that it could turn one of a cultivator's innate divine abilities into divinity. This was undoubtedly an extremely rare opportunity for cultivators who couldn't enter the eroding moon ancient domain. With a deified divine ability, one would have the chance to step into the demigod realm. Of course, the prerequisite was to have a certain understanding of the power of time. This was something that outsiders could not help with. Moreover, the supreme-grade creations just happened to contain a certain kind of power of time. As long as one's comprehension was sufficient, a cultivator could completely leap from the level of a peak 7th stage dominator to a demigod. If each of the four ultimate creations could make a demigod, then this trip to the Eclipse Moon ancient domain would be of great significance to the human race and the demon race. It was equivalent to having 8 more demigods at once. It was a pity that Lang Qingshuang died in the deathmatch, or there would have been 9 new demigods. Of course, not everyone could become a demigod with the ultimate creations. In order to become a demigod with the ultimate creations, the practitioner's own understanding and talent had to reach a certain level. Otherwise, no matter how many ultimate creations there were, it would be very difficult for him to step into the demigod level. Of course, these ultimate creations could also be used by one's own. If it was used by Consort Yu and the others, they could further upgrade their remaining divine abilities to deified divine abilities and increase their own strength. But to be honest, the increase in their combat strength was not particularly great. If they could have someone they trusted enough to help them step into the demigod level, it would be of much greater help to them. Apart from these 4 ultimate creations, they also obtained a divine rune source of revelation from Long Yu. This thing would be given to Long Zitian for now. Long Zitian was a member of the battlefield army. The divine rune source of revelation that he had obtained could be used to improve the combat strength of the entire army on the battlefield. Just the improvement of peak combat strength was not enough for the human race and the demon race to expand their territory. Most importantly, the overall strength of the army on the battlefield of the 2 races had to be improved. I don't know how many cultivation resources Long you can bring out from there this time, but at least it will be more than what we have now. Consort Yu thought to herself. Of course, the ultimate creations she had could be arranged by herself. As for the divine rune source of revelation, she did not want to covet it because she knew very well that whatever Long Yu brought out from that space would be better than these things. By then, most of the things that Long Yu obtained would definitely be left in the forces of the Void Galaxy, which would indirectly strengthen the overall strength of Consort Yu's side. Consort Yu was now relieved. She had finally stepped into the demigod level. After returning to the Void Galaxy, she could join forces with the Dragon of the 9 Nether and destroy the demigod statue of the multi-winged race. In that case, it would be equivalent to another powerful demigod in the Void Galaxy not being sealed in the ancient ruins of the multi-winged race. She could be released. For the development of the entire Void Galaxy, it could be said to be of utmost importance. The 4 of them had begun to consolidate their strength outside and digest everything they had obtained in the eroding moon ancient domain. After they fully absorbed and used it, their strength would definitely become even stronger. As for Long Yu, he also encountered unprecedented trouble in the spherical void where the death fight took place. The range of his soul sense was within a radius of 30,000 meters. When he flew toward a certain treasure spot on the 4th floor, he suddenly noticed that some newly advanced demigods of alien races were surrounding him from 3 directions far away from him. Those 3 directions were the 3 races that Long Yu was most wary of: the mechanical race, the sword race, and the 6-winged race. The opponents had entered the range of 30,000 meters and were encircling him from different directions. Obviously, they had discovered his existence, or rather, they had perceived his location in some way. This was not good news for Long Yu. Moreover, Long Yu seemed to have a feeling that the encirclement against him was far from just these three races. These three clans were the strongest clans in the Langya Star area. There were also some strong clans in the Wild Sand Star area and the Heavenly Dipper Star area. At this moment, they were also preparing. These clans seemed to know something about the Fire God Seal. It was possible that they knew about Long Yu's existence. Under such circumstances, Long Yu's situation became rather grim. However, in the face of such a situation, he did not panic. Because if he panicked now, it would undoubtedly mean that he had already lost the battle. The opponents were attacking from three directions, which wasn't a bad thing for Long Yu, because it meant that the opponents were still very far away from each other. With his ability to teleport 10,000 meters at a time, Long Yu could totally engage in guerrilla warfare with these guys. If he rushed in one direction first, he could kill the guy from that race first and then deal with the other two races. It would be much easier that way. Of course, he had to pick the softest persimmon first. Long Yu sensed from afar that there were 5 new demigods from the machine race, 4 from the sword race, and 7 from the six-winged race. One of them was a golden six-winged race, which was the guy that Long Yu had met twice in a row. Kill the sword race first and then run. Without any hesitation, Long Yu chose the direction of the sword race the moment he found the encirclement of the 3 races and started to teleport 10,000 meters at once. It shouldn't be too much pressure for Long Yu to deal with 2 new demigods at the same time. However, it was hard to say whether or not Long Yu could deal with 4 new demigods at the same time, and all of them were from the sword race. But he didn't have any other choice now. There was no doubt that these guys wanted to kill Long Yu so that he wouldn't leave this place alive. Of course, Long Yu didn't have the option to back out. If he backed out like this, would he be worthy of the mark of fire that he had obtained? Besides, if he backed out now, wouldn't the things in this space have nothing to do with him? He was still counting on these things to develop the Void Galaxy and make himself stronger. No matter what, a fierce battle was inevitable. Long Yu flew straight to where the 4 members of the sword race were. The 4 new demigods of the sword race had clearly seen where the fiery giant was moving in the void, and they quickly reacted. The 4 alien demigods that looked like long swords scattered in all directions. They didn't stay together. Instead, they split up and started to set up formations where they were. Long Yu didn't show any fear, because if they gathered together and fought him head-on, he might not be able to kill them. However, they split up, which gave Long Yu a chance to defeat them one by one. As long as Long Yu killed one of the members of the sword race before their formation destroyed him, he would be able to kill the other 3 new demigods without any suspense. If they acted alone, they wouldn't be able to set up any powerful formation in a short time, unless their formation was a joint formation. Therefore, under such circumstances, Long Yu only needed to kill one of the members of the sword race. The golden flame giant that he had turned into quickly flashed forward in the void. He could cover thousands of meters with each teleport. After only 10 breaths, he was not far away from the 4 members of the sword race. The new demigod teams of the machinery race and the six-winged race were on their way. They would arrive in about half an hour. Before that, Long Yu had to kill all the 4 new demigods of the sword race. If he was careless and got entangled by the other party, what awaited Long Yu was death. Long Yu chose one of the members of the sword race and was ready to strike first. However, before he took action, he suddenly felt that something was wrong in the space around him. From the pitch-black void, countless sword auras suddenly appeared. These sword auras formed a surging torrent that flashed out of the void like countless fish. They instantly enveloped the entire body of the golden flame giant of Long Yu. The formation prepared by the 4 members of the sword race was located in such a remote place. However, it was also because of this that Long Yu was caught unprepared. Countless sword auras enveloped the golden flame giant. Chapter 1573. The golden flame divine power suddenly burst out. Although the boundless sword aura formation covered the golden flame giant's punch created a gap. Then, Long Yu quickly rushed out of the gap and arrived in front of one of the new demigods of the sword race. All of them were new demigod. If they were outside, each of them could become a giant. However, in the Eclipse Moon ancient region, they could only fight against the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into. Even then, they might not be able to defeat him. The golden flame divine power burst out like endless stars and condensed on the arms of the golden flame giant. Then, it smashed toward the body of the sword race. Countless auras of sword soared from the four newly promoted demigods of the swords again and congregated into barriers of sword auras, blocking the fiery giant's golden fist and forcing it to back off. Long Yu thought of something. The four-sword race didn't set up an offensive formation, but a defensive formation. Moreover, with the combined strength of the four-sword race, the sword aura defense formation was watertight. No matter which of the new demigods of the sword race he wanted to attack, he would be defended by the sword aura barrier and his attack would be blocked. Although the golden flame divine power that Long Yu had mastered was much more powerful than the other new demigods, the defense formed by the sword aura barrier was not something that Long Yu could break. Long Yu kept trying and changing his position, but he found that he really couldn't break the defense of the sword aura barrier. This made him a little frustrated. But soon, he thought of something. He recalled the feeling when the flame mark was activated on his forehead. Following that feeling, he sensed that on the forehead of the golden flame giant that he had transformed into, a similar fire god's seal had also appeared. At this moment, he felt that the golden flame divine power in his body had become a little stronger. Break! Without any hesitation, Long Yu knew that he could only fight them head-on. He had to kill the four new demigods of the sword race before the new demigods of the machinery race and the six-winged race arrived. Otherwise, he would be defeated without any suspense. Long Yu didn't know what would happen if he lost, but it was very likely that he would die. Regardless of whether the death of the fiery giant's physical body would affect the death of Long Yu's physical body, he was certain that these new demigods would not let go of his spirit and soul. Once his spirit and soul were destroyed, he would be dead for real. Even if he still had his physical body, there was nothing he could do. After all, the spirit was the foundation of a person, and now his spirit was in the body of this golden flame giant. He began to attack one of the newly promoted demigods of the sword race, who seemed to be the weakest. His fists gathered even stronger golden flame divine power and punched at the newly promoted demigod of the sword race. More and more sword chi barriers were formed in front of the newly promoted demigod and blocked Long Yu's fists that were condensed with golden flame divine power. However, as Long Yu punched again and again, the speed at which the sword chi barriers were forming seemed to be unable to keep up. This made the four newly promoted demigods of the sword race a little nervous. The new demigods of the machinery race and the six-winged race were still 15 kilometers away. Every time they teleported 300 meters, they would need 50 teleportations. In other words, it would take them 50 breaths' time to arrive here. Right now, they only needed to hold on for 50 breaths' time. However, would Long Yu give them the chance? Following Long Yu's continuous punches, the golden flame divine power caused the sword chi barrier's defensive array to continuously tremble. The speed at which the sword chi barrier was formed could no longer keep up with Long Yu's speed of destruction. It became weaker and weaker with each blow. Finally, when the machinery race and the six-winged race were only 10 kilometers away from here, Long Yu completely broke the sword chi barrier with one punch. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the golden flame divine power burst out from his body and condensed into a golden flame divine dragon on his fist. Then, he attacked the newly promoted demigod of the sword race that was closest to him. This was a move that Long Yu had prepared for a long time. Although he could not use any techniques or martial arts techniques right now, he could secretly gather the divine power of the golden flames and kill one of the newly advanced demigods of the sword race with the divine power of the golden flames when he broke the barrier of the enemy's sword auras. Seeing this, the newly promoted demigod of the sword race was greatly shocked. Without any hesitation, the top of its head flashed with white light. It actually chose to retreat from this spherical void. After all, it was a powerful newly promoted demigod of the sword race. Of course, it had obtained treasures or killed other newly promoted demigods of alien races. Therefore, it was qualified to retreat from this spherical void at any time. However, how could Long Yu let it escape? The head of the newly promoted demigod of the sword race flashed with white light. Then, its entire body that looked like a long sword flew away like a wisp of smoke. As soon as it left, the entire sword chi barrier completely collapsed. However, it had no other choice but to leave. Because if it did not leave, the golden flame divine dragon would devour it completely. Then, the defensive formation of the sword chi barrier would still be broken. There was no difference. Instead of making a meaningless sacrifice, it might as well try to protect its own life. However, what it did not expect was that the strength of the golden flame giant that Long Yu had turned into was far beyond its imagination. The golden flame divine dragon landed where the new demigod of the sword race originally stood, directly destroying the defensive formation core there. Then, Long Yu directly teleported a kilometer away, arriving next to the fleeing new demigod of the sword race. The divine power of the golden flame divine dragon instantly condensed into a beam. This was a martial art technique that gathered spiritual light. Long Yu had just tried it. Although he could not use other martial arts techniques or his own techniques, and he could not even use the secret martial arts because he was not in his own body, this move that gathered spiritual light was a martial art technique that could be performed. A divine martial art technique. Naturally, it was a technique that could be activated by the power of gods. Being able to use the gathered spiritual light was a great improvement for Long Yu. It allowed him to instantly burst out the power of a punch that was 4 to 5 times stronger than before. The gathered spiritual light shot out and landed on the body of the newly promoted demigod of the sword race, completely shattering the body of the sword race. The entire body of the sword race that was shaped like a long sword was instantly torn into pieces and turned into dust in the void. The first member of the sword race was finally killed. Right now, the newly advanced demigods of the machinery race and the six-winged race were still 2,500 zhang away from Long Yu. For the experts at the demigod level, even if they were restricted by the eroding moon ancient domain, they could basically launch an attack within a range of 3,000 zhang. In other words, Long Yu only had the last 15 breaths to kill the remaining 3 newly promoted demigods of the sword race. Without any hesitation, after killing the first member of the sword race, he teleported to the other newly promoted demigod of the sword race. Then, he condensed the divine power of the golden flame divine dragon in both of his fists and attacked the newly promoted demigod of the sword race from 2 directions. The demigod of the sword race wanted to run, but it was impossible for it to do so. White light also shone on its head, but it was impossible for it to escape. Under such circumstances, this member of the sword race had a sacrificial spirit. It actually dashed directly toward the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into. Endless sword light shone from the void. Any member of the sword race had extremely powerful attack power, not to mention these newly promoted demigods of the sword race. The first one just now was purely trying to escape. Therefore, Long Yu seized the opportunity and instantly killed it with the divine martial art technique of gathering spiritual light. However, the second newly promoted demigod of the sword race was not so easy to fool. When it saw the death of the first member of the sword race, It understood that it would not be able to escape since it was targeted by Long Yu. Under such circumstances, of course, it wanted to stall the Golden Flame Giant as much as possible so that the Golden Flame Giant would not kill its companions. The sword light shone and the void restriction dispersed. The entire body of the Golden Flame Giant was enveloped by the sword light. Then, the sword light pierced into the Golden Flame Divine Power on the surface of its body, extinguishing part of the Golden Flame Divine Power on the surface of its body. Then, the Golden Flame Giant took out a modified demigod source item from its small world. It was an extremely smooth stone. The surface of the stone was completely transparent, and it could even reflect the image of Long Yu's Golden Flame Giant. This demigod source item was also the essence of a dead demigod, but it had been modified at the elementary level. Now, Long Yu had a rough idea of the levels of demigod source items. They were mainly broken, intact, and above them were elementary modification, intermediate modification, advanced modification, and so on. This was because there were 3 mid-level modified demigod source items in the space of the deathmatch segment of the Eroding Moon Ancient Region. However, they were all treasures on the 4th floor, so it was unlikely that anyone would be able to obtain them yet. The new demigod of the sword race directly took out the stone. It was an elementary modified demigod source item. The new demigod wolf of the demon race, Qing Shuang, had died to an elementary modified demigod source item. Then, the Silk Race Powerhouse had taken the red-lined demigod source item away. Now, another elementary modified demigod source item appeared in front of Long Yu. However, Long Yu did not give it the chance to use this demigod source item. Gather the spiritual light. The fire god mark on Long Yu's forehead lit up again. The golden flame divine power all over his body condensed into a ray of light, which shattered the void and landed on the body of the new demigod of the sword race. The next moment, the physical body of the sword race shattered into pieces. However, it was only a clone. Long Yu did not expect this. The other party had bought him an extra breath of time, and because of this, the elementary modified demigod source item finally showed its effects. Countless mirrors jumped out of the smooth stone and formed a city of mirrors, trapping the Golden Flame Giant within. Chapter 1574. The fiery giant that Long Yu had turned into was surrounded by countless translucent mirrors. He tried to wrap his Golden Flame Divine Power around his fist, and then smashed it towards these mirrors, only to find that these mirrors could actually reflect the power of his Golden Flame Divine Power. This reflected power even caused the golden flames on his Golden Flame Giant's body to dim a little. Gather spiritual light. Long Yu had no other choice. He had to get out of here as soon as possible and kill the new demigod of the swordsman. Otherwise, the situation would be very bad. Gathering the spirit light and using the 5-fold increase in strength, the mirrors were finally unable to resist and were shattered by a beam of condensed spirit light. Then, Long Yu aimed at where the new demigod of the swordsman was and teleported there. The new demigod of the swordsman had intended to trap the fiery giant for a while with the preliminary modified divine level source item and then take the opportunity to leave this space. However, Long Yu's breakthrough was too fast. In no more than 3 breaths, the fiery giant had arrived in front of the new demigod of the swordsman again. It immediately used all the power in its body. Infinite sword auras burst out and fell on the body of the fiery giant. However, it didn't cause any damage to the fiery giant. The Golden Flame Divine Power spread out and blocked the sword auras outside of its body. Then, the sword auras dispersed under the bombardment of the Golden Flame Divine Power. The gathering spiritual light was gathered again and launched. With the momentum that could break the sky, it fell directly in front of the new demigod of the swordsman. This time, Long Yu was still cautious. Without waiting for the result to appear, he immediately condensed another convergence spirit light. As expected, after the first gathering spiritual light hit, the new demigod of the swordsman was shattered. It turned out to be another illusion, the second gathering spiritual light that Long Yu prepared work. His spiritual senses were extremely strong in this space. After he killed the illusion of the new demigod of the swordsman, there was no longer anything that interfered with his spiritual senses. He immediately found the real body of the new demigod. Although it was hidden in the void, it was still bombarded by Long Yu's gathering spiritual light. In the next moment, the golden flame divine power erupted. The new demigod of the sword race was killed by Long Yu just like that, and the basic modified divine-like source item, which was the smooth stone, fell into Long Yu's hands. The divine mirror stone. Long Yu's heart skipped a beat. He could also use this beginner-level modified divine source item. It seemed to solve his urgent problem. That was because he had been stalled by the new demigod of the sword race for too long. It was basically impossible for him to kill the other two sword race members. However, with this beginner-level modified divine source item, he could still give it a try. Divine mirror stone. Divine mirror image appear. The golden flame giant that Long Yu had turned into held the divine mirror stone tightly in his left hand and activated the effect of this divine source item. Immediately, countless mirror-like surfaces appeared in the void. Just like the city of mirrors that trapped Long Yu just now, the mirror-like surfaces stood in the way of the new demigods of the machinery race and the six-winged race. They also blocked the route of the two new demigods of the sword race to escape to the other two races. The two members of the sword race were shocked. White light lit up above their heads. They felt that they couldn't escape anymore, so they chose to retreat. At this moment, they didn't flee in panic. That was because they knew very well that fleeing was useless. If they didn't join forces now, then they would definitely be killed by Long Yu when the time came. 10 breaths of time was very likely to be enough. After all, the two members of the sword race had just died in front of them. They didn't dare to take any chances at all. Let's die together. Thinking to himself, Long Yu looked at the two new demigods of the sword race who had their way blocked. The next moment, the divine power of golden flames suddenly arrived. With the help of the power of the divine source item, the divine power of golden flames actually condensed into a city of mirrors. A city of mirrors burning with golden flames was built just like that. The two members of the sword race who wanted to fight against Long Yu together were trapped in it. Then, the city of mirrors suddenly exploded. Without any suspense, the two new demigods of the sword race who were trapped in it were directly turned into ashes. They couldn't resist the combined attack of the divine power of golden flames and the divine mirror stone at all. The remaining two members of the sword race were easily killed just like that. Even Long Yu felt that it was a little unbelievable. This preliminary modified divine source item was indeed not bad. It could actually make use of the divine power of golden flames and then explode with domineering power. Its destructive power was several times stronger than gathering spiritual light. This was naturally a good thing for Long Yu. It also made him even more expectant. If he could get other better divine source items, such as the advanced modified divine source item on the 5th floor, how much stronger would his strength be? There was only one high-grade modified divine source item in the entire deathmatch segment, and it was the one in the center. Long Yu saw it from the beginning. However, he was the inheritor of the divine throne mark, so he couldn't get that reward directly. He could only wait for the others to take it and then kill them before he could take it back. In other words, he had to drive out or kill all the new demigods of the alien races before the others got that reward. In that way, all the remaining treasures would belong to Long Yu alone. Regardless of which one it was, it would be rather difficult for Long Yu. It was very likely that Long Yu couldn't kill an opponent who had obtained an advanced modified divine source item in his current state. It was not that he couldn't deal with a new demigod of the alien races, but that he couldn't deal with the advanced modified divine source item. It was even more unrealistic to drive all the new demigods of the alien races out of this space before someone got that thing. Right now, he had just killed 4 new demigods of the sword race. There were still 5 new demigods of the machine race and 7 new demigods of the 6-winged race left. It was still a great challenge for Long Yu. Although Long Yu had a preliminary modified divine source item, it was very likely that the remaining 12 demigods of the sword race also had something similar, or even more. After killing 4 new demigods of the sword race, Long Yu felt a little less pressured. Then, he turned around and ran. He didn't choose to fight against the 12 demigods because he saw that even the mirror city that he created with the divine mirror stone was blown up by the 12 demigods in less than one breath. Therefore, it was impossible for him to fight the demigods head-on right now. Before the demigods surrounded him, Long Yu immediately turned around and fled in another direction. He left the shadow of a giant of golden flames in the void, which made the remaining new demigods of the machine race and the 6-winged race feel strange. How could this guy think of running when he was so strong? It seemed that the giant of golden flames was very clear about its own strength. Although it could kill 4 or 5 new demigods, it was absolutely impossible for it to resist more than 10 new demigods at the same time. Therefore, they were even more confident in their alliance and kept chasing in that direction. The giant of golden flames that Long Yu turned into, however, went further and further away. It was because he could travel a distance of 10,000 zhang with one teleport, while the other new demigods could only move forward 100 zhang in this space. Unless they could trap Long Yu in some kind of powerful formation, it was impossible to stop or even kill him. However, the machine race and the 6-winged race were not in a hurry. This time, even if they directly retreated from this void, it wouldn't be a loss at all because the 4 new demigods of the sword race were already dead. In the entire Langya Star Zone, the sword race, the machine race, and the 6-winged race ruled over each other. It could be said that they controlled more than 50% of the resources in the Langya Star Zone. Now that the 4 new demigods of the sword race were dead, the other 2 races still had so many new demigods left. After the trip to the eroding moon ancient region was over, the machine race and the 6-winged race would be able to suppress the sword race further and obtain more cultivation resources. The only thing that they needed to pay attention to was the giant of golden flames. Because of the 6-winged race, they knew the identity of the giant of golden flames. However, only the 6-winged race knew the identity of the giant of golden flames. It didn't tell anyone else. It had its own plan. Very soon, Long Yu flew more than 10,000 zhang away from them. They couldn't find the figure of the giant of golden flames anymore. However, they still continued to chase in the direction where Long Yu disappeared. This was because they would encounter the giant of golden flames again very soon. In that direction, the 2 strongest races of the Wild Sand Star Zone were fighting against each other. If the giant of golden flames wanted to break through, no matter how strong it wouldn't be that easy. The machine race and the 6-winged race could completely stay calm and unruffled in the midst of the chaos. They could catch up slowly and appear only when the battle was almost over. This was a very good plan. However, it was a pity that Long Yu's actions were too fast. He was so fast that they couldn't even guess what he was doing. Of course, Long Yu could feel it. About 10,000 zhang in front of him, there were 2 strong alien races fighting against each other. However, he could feel that the battle between the 2 strong alien races was coming to an end. If Long Yu appeared now, it would be the right time to clean up the mess. To him, this was undoubtedly an extremely good situation. In any case, any newly advanced alien race demigod that appeared in this space was Long Yu's enemy. As long as he could kill them all, it would be fine. If Long Yu wanted to obtain the greatest result, he couldn't let go of any alien race that he could kill. Right now, many treasures had already been taken away by the newly advanced alien race demigod. This also meant that he had lost a lot of treasures. Chapter 1575. This was the fiercest attack of Long Yu's. The two races that were fighting in front of him were both super races in the Wild Sand Star Zone. Their status in the Wild Sand Star Zone was similar to that of the Sword Race, the Machinery Race, and the Sword Race in the Langia Star Zone. Because the race preparation areas of the three star zones were located in the three galaxies around the eroding moon ancient region, the races in each star zone were basically separated. The races that Long Yu had been passing through just now were basically all from the Langia Star Zone. Of course, there were exceptions, but not many. For example, the Cloud Shell Race and the Silk Race were exceptions. Generally speaking, when one entered the void of the deathmatch, the location would be random. But generally speaking, it would still be divided according to the location of the three star zones. It was precisely because of this that the Sword Race, the Machine Race, and the Six-Winged Race were able to fly towards Long Yu's location at almost the same time. They couldn't sense Long Yu's existence from far away, but they were able to make an agreement to head towards the center of the area together before the start of the deathmatch. In this way, there was a very high probability that they would encounter the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into. Of course, for the newly advanced demigods of the Machinery Race and the Sword Race, they didn't know the true identity of the golden flame giant. They only received a notice from the Six-Winged Race that a very special existence would appear in this deathmatch. If they could kill that special existence, they would gain a lot of benefits. In order to make sure that this wasn't a conspiracy set up by the Six-Winged Race, the Sword Race and the Machinery Race secretly joined hands. But they didn't expect that it was true. Moreover, when the newly advanced demigods of the three races were advancing toward the center, they really encountered the so-called special existence. Moreover, the golden flame giant was so strong that it could completely kill the four newly advanced demigods of the Sword Race in a short period of time. The remaining Machinery Race were very hesitant, but this made them even more convinced that they could obtain great benefits by killing the golden flame giant. As a matter of fact, if the golden flame giant that Long Yu had transformed into was killed in this deathmatch, then the remaining 10 newly advanced demigods in this deathmatch would roughly distribute all the remaining treasures equally. This was a very good temptation. However, only the Six-Winged Clan knew about this. Because before this, only a genius like Long Yu had appeared in the Six-Winged Clan. He had also become a golden flame giant in the death match round. This information was only known to the higher-ups of the Six-Winged Clan. It was impossible for them to leak it out. As for the expert of their Six-Winged Clan who had once transformed into the golden flame giant, he had already gone into seclusion. It was said that he was comprehending the barrier to break through to the divine soul realm. Up until now, he had not appeared for several hundred years. However, everyone knew that he still existed and was still alive in this world. Moreover, he was the last powerful guardian of the Six-Winged Clan. If the Six-Winged Clan were to encounter a crisis of extermination, the appearance of that expert would definitely be able to clear away all obstacles. This was the greatest foundation of the Six-Winged Clan. Even the Machine Race and the Sword Race did not know of this news. The young geniuses of the Machine Race and the Sword Race that Long Yu saw in that space were chosen to be imprinted with the Flame God Seat. Of course, all of these things were unknown to Long Yu now. When he saw the two alien races of the Wild Sand Star Zone fighting against each other, he immediately rushed over. He did not hide his strength at all. Every time he teleported, he would cover a distance of 10,000 zhang. With just a few leaps, he had already approached the place where the two alien races were fighting. The reason why Long Yu approached so boldly was that there were only 6 newly advanced demigods left in the battle between the two alien races. Moreover, these 6 newly advanced demigods were all injured. None of them could exert 100% of their strength. These two alien races had a deep hatred for each other. The battle between them was really too tragic. Different from the situation in the Langia Star Zone, if the 3 alien races were in power, they would restrict and balance each other. As a result, there would not be so many bloody battles. However, the situation in the Wild Sand Star Zone was different. The other alien races were all relatively weak. However, only these two alien races were too powerful. In the Eclipse Moon Ancient Domain alone, these two alien races had 11 and 13 newly advanced demigods respectively. This number far exceeded that of the Sword race, the Machine race, and the Six-Winged race. One of these two alien races was the Nature race. Like the Demon race, the individuals of the Nature race were divided into many kinds. However, every individual was a plant, or in other words, a plant in the eyes of humans and demons. Of course, the power that the Nature race mastered was as comprehensive as that of humans and demons. It was a complicated race that could master all kinds of divine characters and the primordial power. In this race there were also many kinds and branches. Long Yu did not know the specific details. Anyway, the relevant information was not even recorded in the demigod colleges, let alone what Long Yu knew. He only knew that these guys were all newly advanced demigods, and the strength of the newly advanced demigods was not as good as that of the golden flame giant that he had transformed into. That was enough. However, he had to be careful of the strength of these guys when they went all out. After all, although their strength was not particularly strong, if they had some quasi-divinity source items or some weird martial arts methods, Long Yu would still encounter some trouble. Once there were too many troubles, even he would not be able to solve them. The other race was called the Oracle race. Basically, every individual of the Oracle race was a ball of light. If the individuals of the Oracle race gathered together, they would be balls of light of various colors squeezed together. If the individuals of the Oracle race were of the same color, they could even fuse together and become a new individual. This was the strongest aspect of the Oracle race. They could rapidly improve their martial arts realm through fusion. It was also because of this that the Oracle race called themselves God's Messengers. Only the Oracle race, as the God's Messengers, could have the ability to improve their martial arts realm so quickly. Of course, in the territory of the Oracle clan, the most common thing was not the willing fusion of two sides. Instead, it was the one-sided devouring of the weaker side by the stronger side. This caused the entire territory of the Oracle clan to be filled with an atmosphere of slaughter. This also led to the fact that every individual of the Oracle race was very strong. This was because the weak would be devoured, and they would not even have the right to retain their own consciousness. There were a total of 13 members of the Oracle race who had stepped into the demigod realm in the Eclipse Moon Ancient Domain this time, while 11 members of the Nature race had stepped into the demigod realm. Among the nearly 200 races that had participated in the Eclipse Moon Ancient Domain, these two races were the most powerful. Long Yu did not see many members of these two races in the advancement area and the fifth area, because they were advancing very quickly. Long Yu was slightly at the back of each area, and he waited for a while before taking action. Therefore, it was a good thing for him to avoid the competition between these peak experts. Otherwise, it was very likely that he would not be able to obtain the Flame God's seal. Of course, Long Yu did not know if the Flame God's seal would be harmful to him, but at the very least, it could increase his strength. This was for sure. Long Yu felt that even if he returned to his original body, he would be able to gradually master the divine power of the golden flames, because he had already learned the method to activate the Flame God's seal on his forehead. At this moment, there were only 3 individuals of the Nature race and 3 individuals of the Oracle race left in the field. The good news was that the remaining 3 individuals of the Oracle race were all in different colors, namely blue, purple, and white. This meant that they could not increase their strength through fusion, but it also meant that 1 or 2 of the 3 Oracle race were very likely to have been fused by 2 new demigods. In that case, their individual strength would be much higher than that of other new demigods. Long Yu did not care too much about this. After all, His strength was much higher than that of the new demigods. Even if the Oracle race had fused, it would be impossible for them to resist his attack. After all, there were only 6 opponents left, and there was a blood feud between the two races. Basically, it was impossible for them to work together to deal with Long Yu. The first demigod that Long Yu approached was a new demigod of the nature race. This new demigod of the nature race was made of some brown branches. It had countless twisted brown trunks, and a lot of brown liquid was flowing on its body. It seemed to be heavily wounded, and blood was flowing out of the wounds. Long Yu went straight to the root of the problem and did not give the new demigod of the nature race any chance. Although the overall strength of the nature race and the oracle race was very strong, it did not mean that each of them was strong individually. After all, they were all new demigods. Why would they be stronger than other new demigods? The 2 new demigods of the nature race had already realized the arrival of the golden fiery giant and made preparations separately. However, they did not expect that the golden fiery giant would charge at them so decisively and smash down with its fist. It was true that they were very surprised that the golden fiery giant could teleport thousands of meters in one go, but they had always been proud and thought that only the oracle race was a match for them. Therefore, they did not escape or retreat from this space immediately. As a matter of fact, none of the remaining 6 new demigods were qualified to leave this space. Although the nature race and the oracle's race fought fiercely, most of those who were qualified to leave had already left. There were too many of them, and it was impossible for them to be like the other races, who had to fight for everyone's right to leave before they could leave together. If they could leave, they would leave without any hesitation. If they couldn't leave, they would find a way to kill other alien races or seize other treasures. This was the cruelty of the 2 races. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.